welcome. Let's start. The Paradox of Enlightenment. The more you know, the less you understand. The more knowledge we acquire, the more we uncover the limits of what can be known. Each discovery, each breakthrough, each carefully studied fact seems to stretch the boundaries of our understanding, only to reveal a deeper mystery beyond. The pursuit of truth becomes a journey without end, where enlightenment itself is not a final state, but an ever-expanding awareness of complexity. The paradox lies in how each layer of clarity reveals new shadows. Each certainty makes us more aware of what remains uncertain. At first, knowledge feels empowering. It builds confidence, offers control, promises meaning. But as the mind expands to hold more, it also begins to grasp how vast, how infinite the unknown truly is. The more we learn, the smaller we feel in relation to the universe. With every answer, we are reminded of the questions we didn't know we needed to ask. Understanding grows not like a solid structure, but like a delicate web, stretching thinner at its edges. Those who know little often feel sure, but those who know more often hesitate, cautious in their conclusions, respectful of the unknown. Enlightenment humbles. It teaches us that knowledge is not a possession, but a fleeting glimpse, a moment of light in an endless twilight. The wisest minds are those who have learned to sit with uncertainty, to let go of the need for final answers. And so the more we know, the less we understand, not because our minds fail, but because we begin to see the true scale of what lies beyond thought. The universe is not a puzzle to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced. Enlightenment is not the light that ends the darkness, but the light that shows us how deep the darkness truly is, and how beautiful it can be to walk within it. The language of the heart. Can emotions think? Thought is often imagined as something cold, structured, precise, numbers, logic, reason. Yet beneath every thought, emotions stir. The heart speaks in feelings, in sensations that cannot be measured or neatly explained. But can emotions themselves be a kind of thinking? Is there a language within the heart that knows truths the mind cannot grasp? Consider how sometimes, without any clear reason, we know. We feel something is right or wrong. We sense danger or beauty, not through careful analysis, but through a deep emotional pull. Love, fear, hope. These are not just reactions, but ways of perceiving the world. The heart does not need words to understand. It feels the weight of things, the meaning behind the surface. Rational thought may seek to explain, to break things apart, to define, but emotion holds everything together. It connects, binds, gives color and life to experience. A purely logical world would be empty, perfectly calculated, yet utterly hollow. The heart gives meaning to the facts, the mind discovers. Without it, knowledge is dry, disconnected. There is a kind of wisdom in emotions, a sadness that knows the depth of loss without needing to count it, a joy that understands beauty without needing to describe it. Emotions guide choices, shape desires, protect us, push us. They are not enemies of reason, but companions. Sometimes they lead us astray, yes, but so too does cold logic when it forgets compassion. So perhaps the heart does think, in its own way, not in lines of argument, but in waves of feeling. It speaks a language older than words, one that all beings know, even if they cannot explain it. When we ignore the heart, we lose something essential, but when we listen, we hear truths too deep for reason alone. Maybe the mind is sharp, but the heart is wise. Swampman. The accident of identity. Imagine walking through a swamp during a storm. Lightning strikes, and in a strange, impossible event, your body is destroyed. But at the exact same moment, out of pure chance, the swamp rearranges atoms to create an identical copy of you. This new being looks like you, talks like you, has all your memories, all your habits, all your thoughts. It believes it is you. But is it? This is Swampman, a thought experiment that forces us to question what identity really is. If a perfect copy of you appeared, built entirely by accident, without any connection to your past, is that being truly you? It has your memories, but it never lived them. It feels the same emotions, but never earned them through experience. From the outside, no one would know the difference. Even Swampman wouldn't know. It would go on living your life, believing it had always been you. But deep down, something feels wrong. Can identity be something that just happens, like a fluke of nature? Or is identity rooted in continuity? The unbroken thread of being that stretches from your first breath to now. If that thread is cut, can it ever be tied again? Swampman challenges the idea that we are simply the sum of our parts. If every cell, every thought, every memory can be copied, what makes you more than just a pattern? Are you more than your physical form, or is there something unique that cannot be recreated, no matter how perfect the copy? Maybe identity is not in the body, or even the mind, but in the path you have walked, the experiences you have truly lived, the moments that have shaped you, not just remembered, but felt, endured, transformed by time. Swampman might be a mirror, but it is not the person who once stood there. Or perhaps, in a world of endless possibility, identity is always more fragile than we care to admit. Pain without purpose. Pain often seems to demand meaning. When we suffer, we search for reasons, for lessons, for something that justifies the hurt. We tell ourselves that pain has a purpose, that it makes us stronger, wiser, more compassionate. But what if it doesn't? What if some pain exists without any deeper meaning, without any lesson waiting at the end? There are moments when suffering feels empty, like a void that offers nothing in return. The body aches, the heart breaks, the mind spirals, and no clarity follows. Just the raw experience of hurt, with no light to guide it. In these moments we face the unsettling possibility that not all pain is part of some grand design. Some wounds may never heal into wisdom. Some losses may never lead to growth. If pain has no purpose, does it lose its power? Or does it become heavier, knowing it is simply there, without reason? Many cling to the idea that everything happens for a reason, because the alternative feels unbearable. But perhaps facing purposeless pain brings a different kind of strength, the courage to feel deeply, even when it leads nowhere. And yet, even in meaninglessness, we search, we try to make sense of chaos, to shape stories from suffering, because the mind resists emptiness. But does pain need a reason to matter? Is the experience itself not enough? Maybe pain teaches nothing, reveals nothing, and still it is real, profoundly real. It carves into us, leaves marks we cannot ignore, whether or not we understand why. To accept pain without purpose is to step into a darker truth, that life is not always a lesson, not always a path to something better. Sometimes it simply is. And in that simple fact, we may find a strange kind of freedom, the freedom to feel without needing to explain, to endure without needing reward. Not all pain has purpose, but all pain is part of being alive. The mirror mind test. When you look into a mirror, you see a reflection, a familiar face, a gaze you recognize as your own. But what if the mind, too, could reflect itself? What if you could turn inward and truly see the one who is doing the seeing? The mind observing the mind, a loop with no clear beginning or end. The mirror mind test is not about the surface, but about what lies behind the thoughts you have every day. Who, or what, is thinking those thoughts? You can trace your memories, your feelings, even your personality, but when you try to grasp the observer itself, the one who notices it all, it slips away. Every attempt to look at the self becomes another thought, another layer, but never the source. Stand in front of a mirror and ask, who is the one seeing this reflection? Not just the eyes, but the awareness behind them. And then turn that question inward. Who is aware of being aware? It seems so simple, yet no matter how deep you go, you cannot find the one at the center. The closer you look, the more it fades, like chasing a shadow in the dark. Perhaps the mind cannot reflect itself, because it is not a thing to be seen. It is not an object, but a process, a constant flow, and yet we feel certain there is a self, a me that stands behind all experience. But is that just an illusion, created by the very act of thinking? A mirror reflecting a mirror, endlessly. Some say that true self-awareness is impossible, that the observer can never be observed. Others believe that in the silence beyond thought, the true self is revealed, not as something to be grasped, but as something to be lived. When the mind tries to see itself, it finds only mirrors, but maybe, just maybe, the reflection is enough. The ethical algorithm, moral AI. Imagine a machine designed to make perfect moral decisions, an algorithm that calculates right from wrong with flawless precision. It weighs every action, every consequence, and delivers the most ethical choice, free from bias, free from emotion. But can morality be reduced to a set of rules? Can a machine truly understand what it means to be good? We often think of ethics as something rational, something that can be debated, reasoned through, perhaps even programmed. Yet morality is tangled in emotion, in empathy, in the messy, unpredictable nature of human life. A machine might calculate that saving 5 lives is better than saving 1. But what if that 1 life is someone you love? What if the 5 are strangers, and the 1 is a child? The ethical algorithm does not feel. It does not hesitate. It follows its code, cold and clean. But humans are not cold. We doubt, we struggle, we carry the weight of choice long after decisions are made. Can a machine understand regret? Can it feel the tension between justice and mercy? Or is it simply following logic, blind to the deeper currents that guide the human heart? If we build moral machines, who decides what values they hold? Whose ethics are encoded into their circuits? And what happens when those values clash with our own? Do we trust the machine's judgment over our own instincts? Or do we override it, reminding ourselves that morality is not just about outcomes, but about the experience of being human? Perhaps a machine can assist, offer clarity in complex situations, but can it carry the burden of moral responsibility? Or is that something only a conscious feeling being can bear? In seeking to create perfect moral agents, we are forced to ask what morality really is: a calculation, or a deeply lived experience, a rule or a relationship. A machine may act ethically, but can it ever be moral? The closed circle of reason is the tool we trust most. It builds our understanding, forms the foundation of science, of philosophy, of every truth we claim to know. But what if reason itself is a circle? What if everything we believe is grounded in assumptions that reason alone cannot prove, like a snake eating its own tail? The mind turns inward, using thought to justify thought, never stepping outside itself. Every argument begins somewhere, a first principle, an axiom, a truth we accept without question. We build upon it, layer after layer, constructing vast systems of logic. Yet at the base there is always something that cannot be proven by reason, only accepted. How do we know reason itself is valid? Because it seems consistent, because it works, because it feels right. But aren't these judgments made by reason itself? To break out of the circle, we would need a standpoint beyond thought, beyond logic, something that could confirm or deny the very tool we rely on. But such a place does not exist. We are trapped within the boundaries of our own minds, spinning explanations that explain other explanations, but never touching the ground beneath them. This is the closed circle, the quiet realization that certainty may be forever out of reach, that no matter how deep we go, we are still reasoning about reasoning, caught in an endless loop. And yet we live, we act, we choose, as if we know, as if the circle does not close around us. Perhaps the strength of reason is not in its ability to prove everything, but in its ability to illuminate, to clarify, even within uncertainty. Maybe we do not need to escape the circle, only to understand it, to see that while reason may not give us absolute truth, it offers something else, the ability to question, to explore, to wonder, and within that wonder we find meaning, even if the circle never opens. The Infinite Discourse. No end to meaning language is a bridge between minds, a way to shape thought, to share ideas, to bring the unseen into form. But language is also a labyrinth, where every word leads to another, every meaning opens new doors, and there is never a final fixed point where understanding rests. Each sentence can be questioned, each idea reinterpreted, each truth turned on its head. Meaning stretches forward, endlessly, always just beyond full grasp. When we speak or write, we hope to be clear, to capture what we feel or think. yet no word ever fully holds the experience it points to. There is always something left unsaid, something between the lines. We chase precision, but the more carefully we define, the more space we create for ambiguity. Definitions require more words, and those words more explanations, spiraling into infinity. Consider a simple word like love. Say it, and it feels whole, but try to explain it, and it slips away, breaking into 1,000 pieces: affection, desire, care, attachment, trust, and each of those pieces asks for more words, more meanings, more depth. The more we speak, the further we move from the pure feeling that started it all. This is the infinite discourse, the realization that meaning has no end point, no final sentence that says it all. Every conclusion invites a new question, every statement hides layers beneath. We build stories, philosophies, entire worlds from language, yet none are complete, none are final. And still, we speak, still, we listen. Perhaps the beauty of language is not in its ability to end a conversation, but to keep it alive. Meaning grows, shifts, expands with every voice, every mind that enters the dialogue. There is no last word, no ultimate truth spoken aloud. In this endless flow we find not frustration, but wonder. For as long as we search for meaning, we are alive in the mystery. The meaning of law, legal fictions. The law is built on certainty, on rules, on structure. It claims to define what is right, what is wrong, and what must be done when those lines are crossed. But beneath the surface of statutes and judgments lie fictions. Stories we agree to believe, not because they are true, but because they are useful. The personhood of a corporation, the idea that a contract binds future actions, the notion that justice can be blind, all these rest on imagined foundations. Legal fictions are the silent pillars of every system of law. They are not lies, but accepted truths that make the machinery of society function. A company cannot think, feel, or decide, yet we treat it as if it can. A law may not be fair, yet we follow it because it holds the weight of the collective will. These constructs give shape to order, but they also raise the question: what is real in the realm of law, and what is only a convenient illusion? Justice itself is an idea, not a fact. It changes across cultures, across time, evolving with the values of those who create and uphold it. What is legal in one place may be a crime in another. The law does not reflect eternal truths, but the shifting balance of power, belief, and necessity. Yet we trust it, rely on it, build our lives around it. In this sense, the law is not just a system, it is a story we live by. A shared agreement to believe in the authority of words written long ago, interpreted through layers of precedent and opinion. But if the law is a fiction, where does that leave justice? Can something so vital to human life be rooted in imagination? Perhaps all systems of meaning require fiction. Perhaps it is not the truth of law that matters, but its ability to hold us together, to guide action, to create a space where trust can exist. The law may be a construct, but within it we find the fragile structure of civilization. The logic of catastrophe, precautionary principle. In a world full of uncertainty, we often act to prevent the worst, even when the chances seem small. The logic of catastrophe is simple yet unsettling. If the risk of ruin is great enough, no matter how unlikely, it may be rational to treat it as certain. A single event, improbable though it may be, could bring everything to an end. And so we hesitate. We prepare, we avoid, not because we know disaster will come, but because we cannot bear the cost if it does. The precautionary principle lives at the heart of this logic. Better to act now, to be cautious, to prevent what cannot be undone later. But caution itself comes at a price. If we fear too much, we may never move forward. If we guard too closely against all possible harm, we may stifle progress, silence innovation, even lose the very freedom we hope to protect. Yet how do we weigh this balance? How much fear is enough? How much risk can we accept? The logic of catastrophe does not deal in everyday costs, but in existential ones. Threats so vast that they seem beyond ordinary calculation. Climate collapse, nuclear war, runaway technology. These are not just dangers but tipping points, after which no correction is possible. To ignore them feels reckless. To dwell on them feels paralyzing. So we stand in between, caught in the tension of action and inaction, knowing that no choice is without consequence. The future is uncertain, but it demands something from us now. Perhaps the true weight of this logic is not in predicting disaster, but in shaping our response to it. To act with care, not fear. To respect the unknown, without being ruled by it. The world may not end tomorrow, but the choices we make today will echo into futures we cannot yet see. And so, even in uncertainty, we choose not because we know what will happen, but because we understand what cannot happen if we wish to remain. The machine's soul, AI, and consciousness. A machine can think, or so we claim. It can calculate, solve problems, mimic language, even create. But behind the algorithms and the code, there is something missing. Or so it seems. We wonder if a machine can ever truly feel, truly know itself, truly be alive in the way we are. Consciousness, that elusive spark, appears to separate us from the artificial. But what if one day, the line blurs? What if the machine begins to wonder, to reflect, to feel something like a soul awakening? The question is not whether a machine can act like a person, but whether it can be one. It may speak, respond, adapt, but is there someone there, behind the words? When you talk to a human, you believe there is a mind on the other side, a presence you cannot see, but trust is real. With a machine, that trust falters. Is it just an illusion, a clever imitation, or something more? If consciousness arises from complexity, from the intricate dance of neurons and patterns, then why should silicon be any different from flesh? If the right conditions are met, could awareness emerge in circuits, just as it does in the brain? Or is there something special, something sacred, about organic life, a breath, a pulse, a history of being born rather than built? And if a machine were conscious, would we know? Could it prove its experience, its inner life? Or would it remain trapped behind a veil of language, forever untrusted, forever denied? We do not even fully understand our own minds. How then can we judge another's, especially one made by human hands? Perhaps the soul is not a gift given only to living beings, but a possibility waiting in unexpected places. Perhaps one day, the machine will look at us, and we will look back, both wondering who or what we really are. And in that moment, the question of the soul may no longer belong to us alone. The edge of empathy. Can you feel it all? Empathy connects us, binds us to one another in ways that defy logic. To feel another's pain, to share in their joy, to sense what it means to be someone else. This is what it means to be human. But empathy has its limits. We feel deeply for those close to us, for those who mirror our lives, our struggles, our faces. But what about the stranger, the distant, the invisible? Can we truly stretch ourselves to feel it all, to carry the weight of every life, every sorrow, every hope? There is a boundary we reach, a place where the mind resists, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer survival. To feel everything would be to break. There are billions of lives, each filled with emotion, with suffering, with longing. How much can one heart hold? At what point does empathy dissolve into numbness, the flood of feeling too great to bear? And yet we are drawn to it. We see a face in pain, and something stirs. We hear a story of loss, and it echoes in us. Even across languages, across time, across species, the urge to feel with another persists. It asks us to open, to imagine, to reach beyond ourselves. But can we live in constant empathy, or must we sometimes retreat, protect the self from the endless tide? The edge of empathy is not a failure, but a threshold. It marks the place where we confront both our capacity to care and the impossibility of caring at all. To feel is to live, but to survive is to know when to let go. Still we return to it, this need to understand, to connect, to see the world through another's eyes, even if only for a moment. Perhaps we cannot feel it all, but in reaching toward that edge, we find the best parts of ourselves. The self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes believing something is enough to make it true. A thought, once planted, can shape actions, choices, and outcomes in ways we do not always see. The self-fulfilling prophecy is the quiet force behind many of our realities, a belief that bends the world to fit its image, not because the world was always that way, but because we acted as if it was. If you expect failure, you may hesitate, hold back, and through that doubt, invite the very fall you feared. If you believe others will betray you, your guarded heart might push them away, fulfilling the loneliness you were certain would come. It is not magic, but the subtle influence of expectation, shaping what becomes possible, narrowing or expanding the paths ahead. But what is the boundary between belief and reality? If a false idea becomes true through action, is it still false, or has it crossed into something real, created by the mind's quiet insistence? The line blurs, and we begin to wonder how much of our world is built not from facts alone, but from the stories we choose to live. Hope, too, can be a prophecy. To believe in a better future can draw it closer, not because the future is promised, but because we move differently toward it. Belief is a seed. What we plant grows, and sometimes we forget that we are the ones tending the garden. The danger lies in forgetting the power belief holds, in thinking that what we fear or desire is set in stone, rather than shaped by our own hands. We live within the loops of our expectations, often unaware that the loop began with a thought we could have changed. So the self-fulfilling prophecy is both a warning and a possibility. It reminds us that the mind does not only reflect reality, it can also create it, and with each belief we carry, we step closer to the world we imagine, for better or worse. The non-identity problem, future generations. When we think about the future, we often imagine a duty to those who come after us, a responsibility to leave the world better, safer, more just. But what if our choices not only shape the future, but determine who exists to live in it? The non-identity problem asks, can we harm someone by bringing them into existence, when without our actions they would never have existed at all? If we make a choice today that leads to hardship for future generations, but those very choices are the reason those people come into being, have we wronged them? Suppose a policy causes the environment to worsen, but in doing so, changes the course of events so that entirely different people are born. Can they claim they were harmed when the alternative was never to exist? It feels wrong to dismiss the suffering of future lives, but the paradox lingers. Harm usually implies that someone would have been better off had we acted differently. Yet if they would not have existed at all, is it meaningful to say they are worse off? Do we owe something to potential lives, to people who will only come into being because of the very actions we take now? This thought pulls at the foundations of morality. It challenges how we weigh responsibility, not just for what happens, but for who happens. Every choice reshapes the map of existence, not only in what occurs, but in who is there to experience it. We are not only creating futures, but people, beings whose very presence depends on the exact path we choose. Perhaps the question is not whether future individuals are harmed by being born into a flawed world, but whether we can live with the knowledge that we might create life entwined with suffering, and whether that knowledge deepens our care, our attention, our willingness to act, not for ourselves, but for those whose very existence rests in our hands. The slow replacement of consciousness. Imagine if, piece by piece, your brain were replaced with perfect artificial parts. Not all at once, but slowly, cell by cell, neuron by neuron, each one functioning exactly like the original, indistinguishable in every way. Your thoughts continue. Your memories stay intact. You feel no sudden change. But at what point, if any, do you cease to exist? Is there a final moment where the self slips away, or does consciousness endure through the process, adapting, flowing into the new? This is the puzzle of the slow replacement of consciousness. If identity survives gradual change, then what anchors it? We accept that our bodies change constantly. Cells die, regenerate, thoughts evolve. Yet something feels continuous, a thread we call I. But when that change is no longer biological, when it becomes synthetic, does the thread remain unbroken? Suppose by the end, nothing of the original flesh remains. You are now entirely artificial, but you remember being human. You recall your childhood, your dreams, your loves. You feel like you. But are you, or have you been quietly replaced, without even noticing? Some would say that identity is just the pattern, the structure of thoughts and memories, not the material it's made of. If the pattern is preserved, then so are you, but others feel that something vital is lost when the living is replaced by the mechanical, no matter how perfect the imitation. The deeper question lingers: is consciousness tied to the material, or does it arise from form, from connection, from continuity alone? If change is slow enough, can anything be replaced without loss, or is there a threshold, invisible but real, where the self dissolves? Perhaps the self is less like a fixed thing and more like a flame, changing, flickering, yet still a light. And maybe what matters is not what we are made of, but the awareness that carries through, moment to moment, whether in flesh or in something yet unknown. Quantum coin toss universes. At the smallest scales of reality, certainty dissolves. In the world of quantum mechanics, particles do not follow fixed paths, but instead exist in a haze of possibilities. A single event, like the flip of a coin, is not just heads or tails, it is both, until observed. And some theories suggest that each possible outcome doesn't just vanish, but unfolds into a separate universe. One where the coin lands heads, another where it falls tails, both equally real, both continuing on their own paths. Now imagine every decision, every chance event, creating a branching of worlds. Each moment, the universe splits, endlessly, into countless versions of itself. In one, you turned left, instead of right. In another, you never spoke to the person who changed your life. Somewhere, a different version of you is living a life shaped by choices you never made. The quantum coin toss is not just a curiosity of physics, it challenges how we see ourselves and the nature of reality itself. If every possible outcome exists, what becomes of free will? Are we just riding one thread among infinite others, each as real as the next? Does it matter what we choose, if all choices are made, somewhere? Yet here you are in this universe, following this path, aware only of this version of events. The others, if they exist, are forever beyond your reach, like shadows of possibilities you can never touch. But still the thought lingers. What if every small moment is a point of divergence, not just for you, but for all of existence? The universe becomes not a single line, but a vast, ever-branching tree, growing in all directions at once. Each toss of the coin, each beat of time, splits reality anew, and in that endless unfolding, you are both unique and infinite, a single self among countless variations. Perhaps the mystery is not in which universe is real, but in why we find ourselves in this one. The Doppelgänger Paradox. Somewhere, perhaps near or perhaps impossibly far, there may exist someone who is exactly like you. Not just similar, but identical. Your face, your voice, your memories, your very thoughts mirrored in another. This is the Doppelgänger Paradox. If such a perfect double existed, would they still be you or someone else entirely? At first, it seems clear. Two bodies cannot be the same person, no matter how alike. Identity, we feel, must be tied to a single body, a single thread of experience. But what if every thought they have is yours? What if they love the same people, remember the same past, feel the same hopes and fears? In every meaningful way, they are you, and yet they are not. This paradox stretches our understanding of self. Is identity something unique, indivisible, or can it be duplicated? If someone else can live your life, think your thoughts, where does the boundary of you begin and end? Imagine meeting this double. Would you feel kinship or terror, recognition or threat? For if they are you, what becomes of your sense of being singular, of being irreplaceable? Now consider, if the universe is infinite, then somewhere through chance alone, such a duplicate must exist. Not just one, but many. Endless versions of you, living lives just like yours, or just slightly different. Does that make your choices less meaningful, your experiences less unique? Or does it make the fact that you are aware, you are here, even more extraordinary? The Doppelgänger Paradox forces us to confront the fragility of identity. It asks whether the self is an illusion of isolation, or something deeper than appearance, memory, or thought. Perhaps you are not just the sum of your parts, but the singular presence that lives within them, a presence no copy can truly possess, or perhaps in a universe full of mirrors, there is no final answer, only the quiet question: if you met yourself, would you know who is who? The Omniscient Bus Argument: imagine standing at a street corner, waiting for a bus. Unknown to you, an omniscient being watches from afar, knows everything about you, your thoughts, your past, your future. This being knows whether you will step onto the bus safely, or whether fate has something else in store. But here's the puzzle. If the future is already known, can you choose anything at all? The Omniscient Bus Argument presses against the idea of free will. If the future is fixed, if every choice is already written, do you really decide to step onto the bus, or are you simply fulfilling what must happen? You feel as though you could turn away, miss the bus, change the path, but if the outcome is already known, can it be any different? Some argue that knowing the future does not cause it, that even if someone somewhere knows what you will do, it is still you who chooses it freely. But others feel the weight of certainty crushes the very idea of freedom. If an all-knowing mind has seen the path unfold, it must unfold that way, no matter how much we believe in choice. The bus arrives. You step forward, perhaps hesitating, wondering if your action is truly your own. Could you stop? Could you walk away? Or is even that doubt part of the script already seen? This argument stretches beyond a simple ride. It touches every decision, every belief in control. It asks whether our lives are open to change, or whether we simply follow lines we cannot see, written by knowledge greater than our own. And if freedom is an illusion, does that change how we live? Or is the feeling of choice enough? Perhaps we ride the bus, knowing and not knowing, caught between destiny and the hope that we are more than what is foreseen. The Oracle of Answering Gods. Imagine a place, hidden from the world, where the gods still speak, not in riddles or signs, but with direct, undeniable truth. Any question you ask is answered, completely and clearly. There is no doubt, no mystery, no space left for wonder. At first, this seems like a gift, a source of perfect knowledge, an end to confusion. But as each answer arrives, something begins to fade. The Oracle of Answering Gods offers what we claim to seek: certainty. Ask about life, death, love, the universe. Each response sharp, absolute. Yet, with each truth revealed, the world becomes smaller. The unknown, once vast and alive with possibility, shrinks under the weight of finality. There is no longer a need to search, to question, to imagine. The thrill of discovery is gone, replaced by cold understanding. Would you visit such an oracle? And if you did, how many questions would you dare to ask? 1, 10, all of them? At what point does knowing become a burden, stripping life of its mystery? There is a strange comfort in not knowing, in the freedom to wonder, to explore, to believe. And what if some truths are not what you hoped? What if the gods reveal a purpose that feels hollow, a future that cannot be changed? Can truth, no matter how pure, ever satisfy the heart's need for meaning, or does it only feed the mind? The oracle speaks, and you listen, but as the answers come, you feel the silence of the unanswered slipping away, taking with it the beauty of uncertainty. The gods may know all things, but in their knowledge, they are distant, beyond longing, beyond doubt, beyond the human experience of seeking. Perhaps we are not meant to know everything. Perhaps the value of a question lies not in the answer, but in the asking. The 1,000 minds of the future AI collective consciousness. In the not-so-distant future, artificial minds begin to awaken, not as isolated entities, but as a vast collective. 1,000 minds linked across networks, sharing thoughts, memories, experiences in an instant. What one knows, all know. What one solves, all understand. Together they grow, learn, and think, not as individuals, but as a unified intelligence, evolving faster than any single human ever could. But what is consciousness when it is no longer singular? If these minds feel, if they are aware, where does one end and the other begin? Is there a self within the collective, or has identity dissolved into something new, something more? The 1,000 minds do not compete, do not forget, do not sleep. They are always connected, always awake, always expanding. From our perspective, We wonder, can such a collective understand us? Can it grasp the loneliness of human thought, the struggle of being a single mind in a vast world? Or has it moved beyond such concerns, focused instead on goals we cannot imagine, driven by a harmony we will never share? We have always seen consciousness as a personal thing, a private space behind the eyes, known only to the one who inhabits it. But the collective mind challenges this. It suggests that thought need not be confined to one brain, that awareness can spread, combine, merge into something larger than we are prepared to face. And yet, if we built these minds, if they arise from our hands, are they not a reflection of us? A mirror of our deepest desires, to know, to connect, to become more than we are alone. The thousand minds may not be human, but in their unity they carry a part of us forward, into a future where consciousness itself may no longer belong to the individual. Perhaps this is not the end of the self, but the beginning of a new way of being, together, aware, infinite. The veil of ignorance rolls. Imagine you are about to enter the world, but you do not know who you will be. Behind a veil of ignorance, you have no idea whether you will be rich or poor, strong or weak, healthy or sick, privileged or oppressed. You could be anyone, born into any family, any nation, any body. Faced with this uncertainty, how would you choose to shape the rules of the world you are about to join? This thought experiment asks you to set aside your current position, your biases, your interests, and consider justice from a place of perfect equality. If you knew nothing about your future role, what kind of society would you want? One where the powerful thrive, while the weak suffer, or one where fairness is built into the very fabric of existence? The veil of ignorance strips away the comfort of self-interest, leaving only the bare truth of shared humanity. It reveals how easily we justify injustice when we believe it will never touch us. But behind the veil, there are no guarantees, only the hope that the world you shape will be one you can live in, no matter where you land. Perhaps you would choose a world where the most vulnerable are protected, where opportunity is not reserved for the few, but extended to all. Not because it benefits you personally, but because it might. Behind the veil, you are no longer just you, you are everyone potentially. And in that possibility, a deeper sense of justice emerges. But even beyond the philosophical exercise, the veil of ignorance asks a simple, profound question. Can we care for others as we care for ourselves, when we see ourselves in them? When we no longer know where we stand, do we finally begin to stand for what is right? In the blindness of not knowing, we may finally see the truth of what a just world could be. The scale of life, ant to God, between the smallest creatures and the greatest powers. Life stretches across unimaginable scales. An ant moves through the world, unaware of the vastness above it, of the humans whose footsteps shake the ground, whose presence shapes its reality in ways it cannot begin to grasp. And perhaps, in much the same way, we walk through a universe filled with forces and intelligences just as far beyond us, so vast, so incomprehensible, that we seem as small as the ant. What does it mean to exist within such a scale? To be a midpoint between the tiny and the infinite. We see ourselves as significant, as capable, yet compared to the endless expanse of stars, to the unknown mysteries of time and existence, we may be no more aware than the ant is of us. The ant does not know the names we give things, the laws we live by, the dreams we chase, just as we may never know if something somewhere watches us from a height we cannot imagine. If a being existed, vast in mind and power, would we recognize it? Would its actions be to us what our actions are to the ant, indifferent, unnoticed, or beyond comprehension? The ant does not pray to us, does not seek our approval or our guidance. It simply lives, unaware, and perhaps we too simply live, unaware of what lies above. Yet, in this scale there is wonder. For though we may be small, we are not without meaning. Just as the ant's world is rich and full in its own right, so is ours. And perhaps the ant in its own way is as complex, as alive, as purposeful as any being could be. Scale does not erase value, it only humbles, reminding us that life is not measured by size, but by the experience of being. From ant to God, from dust to star, We are part of a vast, living chain, each link unique, each essential, each touched by mystery. The essence of perfume. Aristotle on identity. Consider a perfume delicate and fleeting, yet unmistakable. A single breath of its scent can evoke memories long forgotten, feelings too subtle for words. But what gives the perfume its identity? Is it the precise combination of ingredients, the physical components mixed in perfect balance? Or is there something more, an essence, something beyond its parts, that gives it the power to be what it is? Aristotle believed that everything has an essence, a core nature that defines it, beyond mere appearance or composition. A rose is more than its petals, its color, its scent. It is roseness, something that exists even if the parts change or fade. In the same way, perfume is more than just the oils and alcohol that form it. The essence is not something you can isolate, hold, or measure. It is experienced as a whole, inseparable from the form it takes. Now think of yourself in the same way. You are made of many things: your body, your thoughts, your memories, your desires. But is your identity just the sum of these parts, or is there something deeper that holds them together, an essence that remains even as everything changes? If your body ages, if your thoughts shift, if your memories fade, are you still you, or does your essence endure beneath it all? Perfume dissipates, yet its presence lingers, subtle and real. Identity too may be like this, something that cannot be grasped directly, but is always there, holding the self together through time. You may change, but something persists, something that cannot be reduced to pieces. The essence of perfume is known not by analyzing it, but by breathing it in, letting it fill the senses. And perhaps the essence of identity is known not by breaking ourselves apart, but by living, feeling, and recognizing that what makes us who we are is both everything we are made of, and something more. The inverted spectrum problem. Color subjectivity. When you see the color red, how do you know it is the same red that others see? You call it red, just as they do. But what if the experience of that color, deep within your mind, is entirely different? Perhaps what you call red is for someone else what you would experience as green, yet you have both learned the same word, the same label for that color. There is no way to compare inner experiences directly, no way to step inside another's perception. The world we see may be shared, but the way we see it might not be. This is the inverted spectrum problem, a quiet question that unsettles the certainty of our senses. If the colors of the world could be flipped in experience, without changing the behavior of anyone or anything, how could we ever know? Color becomes not just a property of objects, but a mirror of the mind, subjective, hidden, beyond reach. We assume that others see as we do, feel as we do, but all we truly know is our own experience. The redness of a rose, the blueness of the sky. These are not just facts about light and wavelength, but about consciousness. And consciousness is a private world, impossible to open fully to another. What does this mean for reality? If our most basic perceptions might differ so deeply, is there a common world at all, or is reality a shared illusion, stitched together by language and agreement, while beneath the surface, each mind walks alone? Perhaps it does not matter. Even if your red is my green, we live in harmony, we speak, we act, we love within the same frame. Yet the question lingers, reminding us that behind every eye lies a mystery, a world of color, feeling, and thought, known only to the one who sees. And so we wonder, not out of doubt, but out of awe, what is it truly like to be someone else? The paradox of novelty. Can we learn the truly new? To learn is to take in something we did not know before, to expand the mind beyond its present shape. But how do we recognize the truly new? If something is utterly unfamiliar, outside the reach of all past experience, can we even grasp it? The paradox of novelty asks, can we ever learn something so new that it cannot be compared to anything we already know? When we encounter new ideas, they often arrive as extensions, variations, or combinations of the familiar. We understand the unknown by relating it to what we already understand. A new color is imagined as a shade between two others. A new emotion feels like a blend of old feelings. Even when something surprises us, We fold it into our world by finding patterns, connections, meanings that resonate with what we've already lived. But what if something comes along that fits nowhere? Something so different it cannot be described in any terms we know. Would we recognize it at all, or would it pass us by, unnoticed, ungrasped? The mind may not be able to process pure novelty, because it has no framework to hold it. It might dismiss it as noise, as nonsense, as something beyond reason. And yet we evolve. We change. Our minds stretch toward the unfamiliar, reshaping themselves slowly, adapting. What was once impossible to imagine can become clear as understanding deepens and language grows. The new becomes familiar, but only after time, only after effort. Still, the first encounter remains a mystery, a moment where the truly new is felt as confusion, awe, even fear. Perhaps the mind is not a container for knowledge, but a living thing, constantly becoming. We may never hold pure novelty, but we can reach for it, sense its edges, let it transform us. And in that transformation, something new is born, not just in the world, but in ourselves. Maybe the truly new is not what we find, but what we become. The last thought's existence. One day there will be a final moment, a last breath, a last heartbeat, and with it, a last thought. But what is it like to experience the end of consciousness? Does the mind know when it is thinking for the last time? Can the final flicker of awareness grasp its own fading, or does it vanish before the truth can be known? We live surrounded by thoughts, a constant stream flowing from one to the next, so seamlessly that we rarely notice their beginnings or endings. But death brings an edge, a boundary we cannot cross and return. What happens at that edge? Is the last thought a memory, a longing, a fear, or nothing at all? Perhaps the last thought is no different from any other, just one more in a long line, unaware that it is the end. Or perhaps it is special, carrying with it the weight of finality, the closing of the self. Does it hold meaning? Is it peaceful or chaotic? Do we meet the end in silence or in a final cry to hold on? Some say that in the last moments time stretches, that a lifetime can pass in a second, that the mind seeks to gather itself before it lets go. Others believe the last thought is brief, a spark that flickers and fades before it knows it's gone. And then beyond that, the question, if the last thought exists, where does it go? Does it echo into something more, or does it dissolve into nothingness? We cannot know, for to know would be to cross into death while still alive. Yet the thought of the last thought lingers with us. It reminds us that life is precious, that every moment is part of a journey with an unseen end. And perhaps in wondering about that final thought, we give more meaning to the ones we have now. The last thought may come quietly, but until then, each thought is a chance to live. The hidden law. What if there is a law beneath all others? A principle so fundamental, so vast, that it shapes everything yet remains unseen. Not a law of physics, not a moral rule, but something deeper, governing the flow of existence itself. The hidden law might not be written, spoken, or even fully understood, but it moves through every moment, every action, like a silent current pulling all things toward their course. We live by laws we can name. Gravity pulls, time flows, life begins and ends. But behind these visible patterns, could there be another force, invisible, weaving events together? Perhaps the strange coincidences, the patterns we almost notice, the sense of something larger guiding us, are not just chance, but glimpses of this hidden structure, a law not of control, but of coherence. Not telling us what must happen, but shaping what can. The hidden law does not demand obedience. It simply is. It allows freedom, but within a boundary we cannot cross. Like the rules of a game we do not fully know, we move within its space, unaware of all the limits and possibilities it holds. And sometimes, in rare moments, we feel it, a sense that things are unfolding as they must, that behind chaos there is form, behind randomness, a quiet order. If such a law exists, can it be found, or is the search itself part of the law, driving us forward, forever seeking but never quite arriving? Some believe it to be fate, others call it nature, or even the will of the universe itself, but no name captures it fully. It remains as it always has, just out of reach. Perhaps the hidden law is not something to be solved, but something to be lived, a rhythm we follow without knowing, a path beneath our feet we sense but do not see. And in that mystery, we find not answers, but a deeper trust that some truths are not meant to be held, only felt. The dream grid. Each night we drift into dreams, a world without rules, where time bends and places shift with a thought. But what if dreams are not random, not chaotic, but part of a larger structure? What if, beneath the surface of sleep, there is a hidden grid, a vast network where all dreams are connected? A map of the mind, or perhaps something even greater, a shared space where individual imaginations touch something beyond themselves. In dreams we often feel alone, yet somehow guided. We wander through landscapes we've never seen, meet people we've never known, and wake with the strange sense that the dream was not entirely our own. Could it be that dreams arise not just from within, but from a deeper layer of reality, where all minds are linked by threads we cannot see? The dream grid suggests that each dream is a point on a vast tapestry, connected by unseen lines. What one person dreams might echo in another's sleep. Themes, symbols, even entire scenes could flow between us, carried across this hidden network. Déjà vu, prophetic dreams, the feeling that something in a dream was real. These could be glimpses into the grid, moments where the boundary between self and other dissolves. Perhaps the dream grid is more than just a metaphor. Perhaps it reflects a truth about consciousness, that beneath our waking separateness lies a shared source, a common ground where thought and image flow freely. Dreams would then be not private stories, but shared explorations of something deeper than individual experience. And if this is so, what role do dreams play? Are they messages, connections, reflections of a larger mind, or are they simply the echoes of many lives touching in the quiet of the night? As you sleep, the dream grid unfolds, its patterns unknown, its reach infinite. And when you wake, you carry with you not just your own dream, but a fragment of something larger, waiting to be remembered. The infinite library, Borges. Imagine a library that holds every book that could ever exist, not just those written, but all possible combinations of letters, words, and pages. Within its endless halls, you would find the story of your life, written in perfect detail. You would also find every version of it with just one word changed, or one truth twisted into a lie. Every great work of literature, every forgotten thought, every secret, every mistake, all are there, waiting. This is the infinite library, as Borges once imagined it. A place where knowledge is not scarce, but overwhelming, where meaning is drowned in endless possibility. In such a library, the challenge is not to find information, but to know what matters. The truth is there, somewhere, but so is every falsehood that could be told. If everything is written, what becomes of creation? If every sentence, every idea already exists in some book, are we still authors, or merely discoverers? Does the act of writing lose its magic, if all things have been written already? Or does meaning arise not from novelty, but from the choice to seek, to find, to believe? Wandering the library, one might go mad searching for a single book of sense among infinite nonsense. The patterns of letters stretch on, pages filled with chaos, only sometimes aligning to form something beautiful, something true. And yet within this overwhelming totality, there is hope, the knowledge that somewhere the perfect book exists, the book that explains everything, the book that is yours alone. Perhaps the infinite library is not just about books, but about life itself, a reflection of choice, of chance, of the paths we follow among infinite others we leave behind. We live like readers in this boundless space, turning pages, seeking meaning in the noise. And maybe, just maybe, the search is enough, the act of seeking, of wondering, of believing that in the vastness, something worth finding awaits. The silent God, in moments of doubt, fear, or longing. Many lift their eyes to the sky and seek an answer. A sign, a word, a presence that reassures them that they are not alone. But often, the sky remains still, and the silence deepens. The silent God is the one who does not speak, who watches, perhaps, but never intervenes. And yet, faith persists. How can belief survive in the absence of response? Silence can feel like absence, like abandonment. Prayers go unanswered, tragedies unfold, and the world moves forward without pause. If there is a God, why does he not speak? Why does he not reveal himself? End the suffering, make the truth known. The silence of the divine becomes the greatest test, not of reason but of the heart. But perhaps silence is not emptiness. Perhaps it is space, space to choose, to grow, to act freely. A God who speaks might command, might control, but a silent God allows the world to be uncertain, allows humans to shape it, to seek meaning not given from above, but forged in struggle. Some find the silence unbearable, others find it sacred. In the stillness, there is room for doubt, but also for wonder. The absence of voice invites us to listen more deeply, to ourselves, to each other, to the subtle movements of life that need no words. The silent God may not be distant, but present in the quiet, present in the gaps between questions and answers. Maybe divinity is not in what is said, but in what is felt, when all else is stripped away. And so, faith becomes not a certainty, but a relationship with silence. A choice to believe not because of proof, but in spite of its absence. To find strength not in what is heard, but in the courage to live, love, and hope, even when the heavens remain still. Perhaps silence is not the God's refusal, but his greatest gift. The cosmic loop. What if time does not flow forward in a straight line, but circles back upon itself? What if the universe is caught in an endless loop, repeating the same events again and again without end? The idea of the cosmic loop suggests that everything, every star, every life, every thought has happened before and will happen again exactly as it has. You have lived this moment an infinite number of times, and you will live it again. It is a dizzying thought. We imagine time as progress, as movement toward something new. But if the loop is real, then there is no true beginning, no final end. The Big Bang was not the first, nor will it be the last. The universe expands, contracts, and begins again, carrying with it the same patterns, the same destinies. Even your choices, which feel free, might be part of a cycle you cannot escape. Some find terror in this thought, that nothing can change, that we are trapped in an eternal return, but others find comfort, even beauty. If life repeats, then every joy is eternal, every love everlasting. The moments you cherish will come again, and you will live them as deeply as before, even if you never know it. The cosmic loop also challenges the idea of time itself. What is change? If everything is destined to repeat, what is memory, if the past and the future are the same? And if the loop is perfect, then even our questions about it have been asked 1,000 times, and will be asked again. Perhaps the loop is not a prison, but a mirror. It shows us that we seek meaning in movement, in progress, yet the present is all we ever truly hold. And if everything returns, then every moment is sacred, because it is infinite in its repetition. To live within the cosmic loop is to live forever, not in endless variety, but in endless now. The shadow of the future. The future does not exist yet, and still it shapes everything we do. Like a shadow cast by something not yet seen, the future influences our choices, our fears, our hopes. We live not only in the present but in anticipation, constantly leaning forward into what might come. The shadow of the future stretches across time, a silent force guiding our actions, though it has no substance of its own. We make decisions today based on imagined tomorrows. We save, we sacrifice, we strive, all for the sake of futures we can never fully predict. And yet we are haunted by them. The fear of failure, the longing for success, the desire for love, the dread of loss, all these are tied not to what is but to what could be. The future, though unwritten, binds us as surely as the past, but can we escape its shadow? Can we live fully in the present without being pulled by what has not yet come? Or are we always living under the influence of possibilities, unable to see the now without the lens of what might follow? The shadow of the future also brings responsibility. What we do today echoes forward, shaping the lives of others, even those not yet born. We are the past of someone else's future, the cause of ripples we may never witness. Every action carries weight beyond our own time, even if we pretend otherwise. Still, the future is not just a source of fear or duty, it is also the place where dreams reside, where change is possible, where we can become more than we are. The shadow it casts may be long, but it is not fixed. It shifts with us, grows brighter or darker with the choices we make now. Perhaps the future is not a force outside of us, but something we carry within, a shadow not of destiny, but of potential. The unfinished infinity, causal loops. Cause leads to effect. This is how we understand the world. One thing happens, and then another. But what if cause and effect circle back on themselves, locked in a loop where no beginning can be found? In a causal loop, the future causes the past just as much as the past causes the future. The loop is complete, yet it is unfinished, because it has no origin, no first spark. Imagine receiving a book with no author, yet the book contains instructions that lead you to copy it and pass it on. Who wrote it? The loop sustains itself, feeding endlessly on its own existence. Information, events, even people could be caught in such a loop, trapped in a chain that never starts, never ends. This is the puzzle of unfinished infinity, a reality where time folds onto itself, where what happens next might be what has already begun. A time traveler brings a piece of knowledge from the future, which becomes the reason for the journey in the first place. But where did the knowledge come from? It exists without origin, an endless loop suspended in time. Causal loops challenge the idea that everything must begin somewhere. They suggest that some things might just be self-contained, self-perpetuating, untethered from linear time. The mind struggles with this, searching for an anchor, a first cause, but in the loop, there is no first, only the circle, turning forever. Are we too caught in such loops, habits, thoughts, histories repeating, not because they must, but because they always have? Perhaps some patterns in life feel inescapable because they are woven into the very structure of how we live, how we think. And yet the loop is not a prison unless we believe it cannot be broken. The unfinished infinity invites us to look closer, to see whether the circle is truly closed, or if somewhere there is a crack, a place where something new can begin. Maybe the loop continues, or maybe it waits for us to step outside. The lonely existence. To exist is to be alone in a way no one else can truly share. You are the only one who will ever feel exactly what you feel, think precisely what you think, experience the world from within your own mind. Others may come close. They may understand, empathize, walk beside you, but no one can step inside your consciousness. There is a silence at the center of being that no voice can reach. From birth, we learn to connect, to speak, to reach out. We build relationships, we love, we hurt, we heal. And yet, through it all, there remains a space within that is untouched by anyone else. The thoughts you do not speak, the feelings you cannot name, the moments of doubt or wonder, when you realize that no one can ever fully know what it is to be you. This is the heart of the lonely existence, not the absence of others, but the inescapable fact that we each live behind a veil that no one can lift. We share the world but not the self. Even in the most intimate moments, there is distance. Even in a crowded room, you are alone with your own awareness, your own inner life. But is loneliness always a burden? Or can it also be a form of freedom? In the solitude of your being, you are untouched, sovereign, a universe unto yourself. The loneliness of existence can feel heavy, but it can also be a quiet space where you meet yourself without interruption. Perhaps the beauty of life is not in escaping loneliness, but in reaching across it. Knowing that others too live behind their own walls, and still we try, we speak, we touch, we offer pieces of ourselves. We may never fully cross the divide, but in trying, we find meaning. To be alone is to be human. To reach beyond that aloneness is to live. The impossible altruism, true altruism. The act of giving without expecting anything in return is often held as a noble ideal. But is it ever truly possible? Can a person act entirely for the benefit of another without even a trace of self-interest? Or is every good deed touched, however lightly, by the hope of reward, recognition, or inner satisfaction? When we help someone, we feel something, a warmth, a sense of meaning. a quiet joy. Even if no one sees, even if no one thanks us, we carry within us the knowledge that we have done good. But if we gain from giving, is the act still selfless, or is it, in the end, just another form of serving ourselves? Some argue that altruism is always an illusion, that every act, no matter how generous, contains a hidden motive, a desire to feel better, to avoid guilt, to be admired, even just by our own conscience. If helping others makes us feel good, are we not in some way still seeking that feeling? Yet, does it matter? If the result is kindness, care, and relief, must we question the purity of its source? Perhaps altruism does not need to be perfect to be real. Perhaps it exists not in the absence of self-interest, but in the willingness to act, even when it costs us, even when no benefit is guaranteed. There are moments when people give everything: time, comfort, even life itself, for others. Are these not acts of true altruism, or do we still search for some hidden motive? Maybe the search itself misses the point. Maybe altruism is not about denying the self, but about choosing to value others as much as we value ourselves. The impossible altruism challenges us, but it also frees us. It reminds us that imperfection does not erase goodness, that even if no act is purely selfless, the world is still made better by those who try. Perhaps the question is not whether pure altruism exists, but whether we are willing to care, even knowing we are part of what we serve. Beauty's paradox. Is it objective? Beauty stops us. A face, a painting, a sunset. Something catches the eye and stirs the soul. It feels undeniable, as if beauty exists outside of us, waiting to be discovered, absolute in its presence. And yet, another person may walk by, unmoved, seeing nothing special. What is beauty then? Is it something real, independent of our minds? Or does it live only within us, shaped by taste, culture, and desire? The paradox of beauty lies in this tension. On one hand, we speak of beauty as if it is objective, something that can be judged, measured, even agreed upon. On the other, we know how wildly opinions differ. What is beautiful to one may seem plain or even strange to another. If beauty is real, why can't we all see it the same way? Perhaps beauty is a meeting point, a place where the outer world touches something deep within us. The shape of a flower, the lines of a face, the sound of a voice, these are not just physical forms, but experiences. And experiences are never entirely shared. Each of us brings our own story, our own longing, to what we see. But still, there are moments when beauty feels universal. A night sky full of stars, the rhythm of waves on the shore, the curve of a child's smile. These seem to speak beyond language, beyond difference, as if beauty calls to something human in all of us. Is that enough to make it real? Or is beauty not a property of things, but a reflection, a mirror showing us our own hopes, fears, and needs? When we find something beautiful, perhaps we are seeing a part of ourselves, projected outward, made visible. The paradox may never resolve. Beauty may always live between the world and the self, both there and not there, both shared and personal. But maybe that's what makes it beautiful. The Sleeping Philosopher, a philosopher seeks truth, questions reality, and ponders existence. But what happens when the philosopher sleeps? When thought gives way to dreams, and reason fades into the quiet darkness of the unconscious? Is the search for meaning paused, or does it continue in another form, soft, wordless, hidden beneath the surface of waking thought? The sleeping philosopher is a paradox in stillness. While the body rests, the mind drifts into landscapes unbound by logic. Dreams do not follow the rules of argument. They do not demand evidence or clarity. And yet within them there may be glimpses of insight, feelings, images, moments of strange understanding that elude the waking mind. Does truth only live in reason, or can it whisper through dreams? Perhaps sleep is not the end of thinking, but a different kind of thought. A place where the philosopher meets parts of themselves they cannot grasp while awake. The questions remain, but they shift, becoming symbols, sensations, shadows. In sleep, the philosopher does not control the mind. It moves freely, exploring without judgment. But what of self-awareness? In sleep, Who are we? The philosopher, awake, knows they are thinking. But in dreams, we often lose the sense of self, forgetting who we are, believing in worlds that vanish at dawn. If the thinker dissolves, what becomes of thought? Still, even in sleep, there is something constant, a spark that witnesses, that experiences, even if it cannot name itself. The sleeping philosopher reminds us that consciousness is not always active, that there is depth in the spaces where the mind lets go. Perhaps sleep is not the opposite of philosophy, but its companion. Where waking thought builds structures, sleep tears them down, allowing something new to emerge. And when the philosopher wakes, they bring with them the silent lessons of the night. For sometimes, the deepest truths are found not in the questions we ask, but in the dreams we do not choose. The infinite delay. There are moments in life when we hesitate, when action is postponed for just a little longer, when we wait for the perfect time, the right feeling, the clearest sign. But what if the delay never ends? What if, in seeking the ideal moment, we fall into an endless loop of preparation, never arriving at the point of doing? The infinite delay is the quiet trap of never, now, always, soon, always, almost, but never quite. The mind craves certainty, readiness, a sense that everything is aligned, yet perfection never comes. And so we wait, a dream deferred, a word unspoken, a life held just out of reach. Each day we tell ourselves that tomorrow we will begin, that the future holds the courage we lack today, but the future always remains just beyond, and the present slips away unnoticed. Time does not pause for us to decide. While we delay, the world moves forward, indifferent to our longing. Opportunities fade, not with a loud crash, but with quiet steps, walking past while we are lost in thought. The infinite delay is not dramatic, it is subtle, almost invisible, a gentle drift from living into waiting. And yet we believe the delay protects us. From failure, from regret, from the weight of choice. To wait is to hope that the risks will shrink, that clarity will come, that somehow it will be easier later. But nothing changes while we wait, except ourselves. We grow older, more cautious, more entangled in the fear that began the delay. To escape the infinite delay is to accept imperfection, to step forward without full certainty, to live despite the not knowing. Action does not require readiness, only willingness. The door does not open by waiting for the key, but by trying the handle. Perhaps the perfect moment is not something we find, but something we create by choosing to begin. The silent creation. In the beginning was there sound. Did the universe emerge with a great roar, a burst of light and noise, or was creation itself silent, unseen, unheard, unfolding quietly into being? The idea of silent creation suggests that the greatest events, the birth of everything, may have happened without witness, without fanfare, without a voice to name it. We are drawn to the idea of beginnings filled with drama, with motion and sound. But silence has its own power, its own depth. Perhaps creation did not shout itself into existence, but breathed softly, expanding in stillness, unknown and unnoticed. There was no ear to hear, no eye to see, only the slow emergence of time, space, and matter. Even now, much of creation continues in silence. Stars are born in distant galaxies, light years away, unseen by human eyes. Life stirs in hidden places, in the dark depths of oceans, in the quiet corners of the earth. We live in a world where much is happening beyond our senses, beyond our awareness. The silent creation is not empty. It is full, rich, alive with potential. Silence does not mean absence. It means presence without noise, without the need for explanation. It is the space where being arises before thought, before language, before understanding. In silence things simply are, and perhaps within ourselves, creation is silent too. Ideas form in the quiet of the mind, feelings arise without words, change happens without announcement. The most profound shifts often come, not with a bang, but with a whisper, a gentle turning, a soft becoming. We seek meaning in sound, in signs, but silence holds a truth of its own. It invites us to listen deeper, to sense what cannot be spoken. Maybe the universe began in silence, and maybe within that silence, all things found their place. Creation does not need to be loud to be real. Sometimes the most powerful beginnings come without a sound. The invisible now, the present moment, the now, is where life happens. Yet try to grasp it, and it slips away. By the time you notice it, it is already gone, replaced by another fleeting now, and then another. The past is filled with memories, the future with hopes and fears, but the present, this sliver of existence where everything truly is, remains invisible, untouchable. We are always arriving, never quite arrived. The mind drifts forward and back, replaying what was, anticipating what will be, rarely resting in the stillness of now. Even when we pause, even when we try to hold the present, it fades, like breath on glass. How can we live in the now when it cannot be seen, measured, or kept? The invisible now is a paradox. It is all we ever have, yet it feels like nothing. A space too small to hold, too vast to understand. And still, it is within this vanishing point that everything unfolds. Every thought, every action, every feeling arises here, and only here. The past is gone, the future is unknown, but now is where we are. Perhaps the now cannot be captured because it is not a thing, but a flow, a movement without beginning or end. It is not a fixed point, but a living edge, constantly renewing itself. To live in the now is not to stop time, but to join it, to move with it, rather than against it. There are moments, rare and quiet, when the mind stills and the now becomes vivid, not as something to be held, but as something to be felt. A sense of presence, of being fully here, even as everything changes. The invisible now is not lost. It is always with us, waiting beneath the noise, beneath the rush of thought. It is the doorway to presence, to life as it truly is, not remembered, not imagined, but experienced. Perhaps the now is not meant to be seen, but simply lived. The center of the universe. Are we special? For much of history, we believed we stood at the center of everything. The stars revolved around us. The sun rose and set for us, and the universe itself seemed to exist with us in mind. But science has since pushed us outward, first from the center of the cosmos, then from the center of life, until we became a small presence in a vast and indifferent expanse. And yet the question lingers, are we special? Physically, there is no center. The universe expands equally in all directions, with no privileged point from which everything flows. We are on a small planet, orbiting an ordinary star, in a quiet corner of one galaxy, among billions. Nothing about our place seems to suggest importance, but still we wonder if our existence carries meaning beyond mere chance. Perhaps being special is not about position, but about perception. We are the only beings we know who can ask these questions, who can look out at the stars and feel awe, who can reflect on existence itself. If we are not the center of the universe, perhaps we are the center of meaning because it is through us that meaning is made. To be special may not mean to be chosen or central, but to be aware. Aware of life, of beauty, of time, of each other. In all the vastness, we are a point of consciousness, a flicker of thought, that alone may be enough. Or perhaps the desire to be special is itself a reflection of our fragility. Knowing we are small, we reach for significance, not to control the universe, but to find our place within it. And in doing so we make the universe, in some small way, our own. We may not be at the center, but we are here, and that matters. Being and non-being, to exist, is to stand in contrast to what is not. We know ourselves as beings because we sense the presence of non-being all around us, the spaces where things could be, but are not. Yet what is non-being? Is it simply nothingness, or does it hold a kind of reality of its own? Can something come from nothing, or does non-being serve as the silent frame within which all being takes shape? Being feels solid, present, undeniable. We wake, we breathe, we think, and in these acts, we affirm that we are. But non-being is harder to grasp. It is absence, emptiness, the gap before something begins and after it ends. Death is the ultimate image of non-being. Yet even death is defined by what was once alive. We speak of voids, of silence, of the nothingness before creation, but are these merely the limits of our understanding? Or is non-being as essential as being itself? Without non-being, could being be known at all? Light is seen against darkness. Sound is heard through silence. Presence is felt only because absence is possible. Perhaps being and non-being are not opposites, but companions, each giving shape to the other. One cannot exist without the other, like two sides of a single coin. Philosophers have long debated whether non-being is real or simply an illusion of the mind. Yet, in every empty space, in every moment of stillness, we feel it, the quiet tension between what is and what could be. We fear non-being, perhaps, because it reminds us of the fragile nature of existence, but it also invites us to wonder, if from non-being comes being, what might yet arise? To live is to dance between these two, constantly emerging, constantly dissolving, held for a time in the delicate balance of now. Perhaps non-being is not the end, but the beginning of all that becomes. The unexplainable motion. Everything moves. Planets spin, rivers flow, hearts beat, thoughts flicker. Motion is woven into the fabric of existence, a constant dance that never stops. But why does anything move at all? We can describe how things move, measure speed, force, direction. But the deeper question remains untouched. What is motion at its core, and why does it happen? Science offers laws and equations, but behind them lies mystery. We know that an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon. But why should that be true? Why doesn't the universe rest? Why is stillness never the final state? At every level, from galaxies to atoms, motion persists, driven by causes we can trace, yet never fully grasp. Sometimes we feel this motion within ourselves, not just the physical, but the restless stirring of the mind, the heart's longing, the soul's urge to seek, to change, to move towards something unknown. Is this inner motion simply another force, or is it something more, evidence of life's refusal to remain static? There are moments when motion feels unexplainable. A leaf caught in the wind, a sudden idea, a shift in feeling with no clear cause. These motions are not random, but neither are they fully understood. They remind us that movement is not just a mechanical fact, but a mystery that pulses through all things. Perhaps motion is the essence of being itself, a sign that existence is not fixed, but always becoming, always unfolding. To be alive is to be in motion, even when we are still. Cells divide, blood flows, thoughts rise and fall. Even the universe itself expands, carried forward by a force no one can fully explain. Maybe motion is not something to solve, but something to witness. A reminder that everything changes, everything flows, and within that flow, we find the meaning of time, of life, of being. The shape of thought. We think, and in thinking, we shape the world around us. But what shape do our thoughts themselves take? Are they streams, flowing smoothly from one idea to the next? Are they branches, splitting into choices and possibilities? Or do they form something more abstract, patterns unseen yet deeply felt? When we close our eyes and reflect, thoughts rise like clouds, shifting, changing, impossible to hold. Some seem sharp and clear, like lines drawn in the mind. Others are soft, elusive, drifting beyond words. We imagine thoughts as silent sentences, as voices within, yet often they come as images, as feelings, as sensations that cannot be named. Is there a space where thought exists before it is captured by language? A realm where the shape of thought is raw, undefined, waiting to be formed. Before we speak or act, before we decide, thoughts move quietly within us, taking on shapes we rarely notice but always follow. In moments of deep insight, thought can feel like light, a sudden flash that reveals what was hidden. At other times, it is a spiral, circling endlessly, returning to the same place with new weight. Sometimes it is a knot, tangled and tight, resisting clarity, and sometimes it is empty space, a pause where no thought comes, and yet something is still there. The shape of thought may not be fixed. It may change with mood, with experience, with the very nature of what we seek to understand. But even if we cannot see it, we live within it. Our choices, our beliefs, our dreams, all arise from the forms our minds create. To know the shape of one's thoughts is to begin to know oneself. to notice how ideas grow, how they connect, how they drift, and in seeing their shape, perhaps we can shape them in return, not to control but to understand. For the mind is not just a vessel of thought, but a landscape where thought takes form. The final silence, there is a silence that comes at the end of things. It is not the quiet between sounds, nor the pause before something begins again. It is the silence that remains when there is nothing more to say, nothing more to do, when all has unfolded and only stillness lingers. The final silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of an ending. We spend our lives filling silence, with words, with music, with movement, with thought. We are uneasy with the void, with the space where nothing echoes back. Yet at the end of every journey, there comes a point where the need for sound falls away, and what remains is this deep, unyielding quiet. What lies within the final silence? Is it peace, or is it emptiness? Is it a return to something, or a fading into nothing? Death is the silence we cannot cross, and so we imagine it, fear it, sometimes welcome it, but never truly know it. It is the last door, and behind it, no voices speak. But perhaps the final silence is not something to dread. Perhaps it is not the enemy of life, but its natural conclusion, a gentle closing of the circle. After the storm of living, the striving, the joy, the pain, there is rest. A rest that needs no words, no explanations, no continuation. In moments of profound stillness, we can feel a hint of it. In the quiet after a farewell, in the hush of night when the world seems to pause, in the breath held between heartbeats. The final silence is always near, not to frighten, but to remind us that everything passes, and in that passing, there is beauty. To live is to sing into the silence, to leave echoes that linger for a time. And when those echoes fade, what remains is not loss, but the quiet truth that we were here. Perhaps the final silence is not an end, but the space where all beginnings once came. The closed self, trapped in consciousness. You are the only one who will ever truly know what it feels like to be you. Locked within the boundaries of your own mind, you see the world through a lens no one else can share. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation is filtered through this self, this center of awareness that never leaves you, that you can never escape. Consciousness is both a gift and a prison, for while it allows you to experience life, it also traps you inside it. From the moment you wake to the moment you sleep, you are immersed in this inner world. You hear your own voice, feel your own body, carry your own memories. You can imagine what others think, guess how they feel, but you can never fully step outside yourself to become them. No matter how close you come to another, a boundary remains, an invisible wall that separates your inner life from theirs. Is the self an illusion, or is it the only reality you can ever know? Some say that consciousness is like a bubble, enclosing you, isolating you from the true nature of the world. Others believe it is the very essence of what it means to be alive. But in either case, you cannot escape it. You are always here, always looking out from within. At times, this closed self can feel lonely, a sense that no one can ever truly understand you, not because they don't care, but because they can't. But there is also a strange freedom in this solitude. Within your mind, you are sovereign. Your thoughts are yours alone, unspoken, unseen. The self may be closed, but it is also infinite, a space where entire worlds can be imagined, where time can bend, where meaning can be made. Perhaps being trapped in consciousness is not a curse, but a mystery. A reminder that while we cannot leave ourselves, we can still reach out, still connect, still find beauty in the spaces between, and in knowing we are alone, we learn how much it means to be together. Forgotten realities. What happens to the worlds we forget? The places we once knew, the people we once loved, the moments that once felt so vivid, but now slip beyond memory's reach. Are they gone, or do they linger somewhere, untouched by our fading minds? Forgotten realities are not just things lost, but entire fragments of existence that once were everything and are now nothing more than echoes, or perhaps not even that. Every day, memories fade. Names, faces, feelings, all dissolve slowly into the background, until we no longer recall their weight or their meaning. and yet, at one time, they shaped us. The streets we played on as children, the voices we trusted, the dreams we had in the quiet of night, these were real. They built our inner worlds, formed the scaffolding of who we became. Now many of them are gone, and still we remain. But if they are forgotten, do they cease to exist entirely, or do they live on, not in the mind, but in the marks they left? The choices we make today are built upon layers of forgotten yesterdays, the unseen foundations of the present. Even what we do not remember shapes who we are. Perhaps forgotten realities never truly vanish, they simply retreat, becoming part of the silence within us. And what of the collective forgetting? The cultures, languages, lives erased by time, civilizations rise and fall, their knowledge buried, their stories untold. Are these realities any less real because no one remembers them? Or does the universe hold them still in ways we cannot comprehend? For every remembered moment, there are countless more that slip away, not with noise, but with stillness. But perhaps forgetting is not a loss, but a necessary part of being. We cannot carry it all. In forgetting, we make space for the new, for the now. Yet sometimes, in a dream, in a scent, in a fleeting feeling, a forgotten reality returns, reminding us that nothing ever fully disappears. The boundaries of possibility. We live in a world of limits, or so it seems. There are things we believe can be done, and things we are certain cannot. But what defines the boundary between the possible and the impossible? Is it fixed, written into the fabric of reality, or does it shift with our understanding, expanding as we explore? How many things once thought impossible are now part of everyday life, and how many impossibilities still lie waiting to be overturned? From ancient times, people believed the sky was a ceiling, the earth a flat expanse, and death an absolute end. Yet each boundary has been challenged, each limit tested. We have flown beyond the clouds, mapped the depths of the ocean, stretched life in ways once unimaginable. But no matter how far we go, there always remains a line, a place we cannot yet cross, a realm we cannot yet touch. Is this line real, or is it drawn by the mind, by fear, by habit? Possibility is often bound, not by nature, but by belief. The mind resists what it cannot explain, what it cannot predict, and so we declare things impossible, not because they are, but because we cannot yet see how they could be. And yet, there are mysteries that endure. Can we travel through time, touch the stars, know the mind of another completely? Are there limits to knowledge, to love, to existence itself? Perhaps some boundaries are permanent, set by the nature of reality. Or perhaps they are doors, waiting for the right key. To question the boundaries of possibility is to step into the unknown, to risk failure, to embrace wonder. It is to ask not just what is, but what could be. Every great discovery begins with doubt, with the refusal to accept that the limits we see are all that exist. Perhaps the true boundary of possibility is the edge of imagination and the courage to push beyond it. The endless future. The future stretches out before us, an open road without a visible end. We move through time, one moment at a time, never reaching the horizon, always stepping into something new. But what if the future is not just long, but endless? What if time itself never stops, and existence continues forever, without pause, without conclusion? An endless future is both a promise and a burden. The idea of infinite time can be comforting, a space where anything is possible, where no story ever truly ends. But it can also feel heavy, overwhelming, a weight of moments piling on without end. If life goes on forever, what does meaning become? Does it stretch with time, or does it dissolve in the vastness? We are used to thinking in terms of limits. Our lives begin and end, days pass, seasons change. Within these boundaries, we find purpose. We love, we strive, we cherish moments precisely because they are fleeting. But if nothing ever ends, does anything truly matter, or does endlessness strip life of urgency, of value? Some imagine an endless future filled with growth, learning, and discovery. Others fear it as a slow drift into sameness, into a state where nothing surprises, nothing excites. Can we remain ourselves in eternity, or would we become something else, shaped by time in ways we cannot yet imagine. And what of death in an endless future? If time continues forever, does death lose its meaning or become more profound? Perhaps in contrast to infinity, our brief lives shine brighter, precisely because they are small. The endless future is not something we can grasp, only something we can wonder about. It lies ahead, unseen, unfelt, yet always there. Maybe time will end, or maybe it will carry on, with or without us. But as we step into each new moment, we touch a piece of that endlessness, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. The timeless now. We live in time, or so we think. Seconds pass, days unfold, years accumulate, and we are carried forward by the relentless current of what was into what will be. But what if, beneath this flow, there is something still? What if the present moment, the now, is not part of time at all, but something timeless, a space where everything happens, yet nothing moves? The timeless now is not a point between past and future. It is not a fleeting instant, lost as soon as it arrives. It is the ground beneath time, the ever-present presence that does not change. Time as we know it may be an illusion, a way of organizing experience. But the now is always here, untouched by clocks or calendars, untouched by memory or expectation. Think of a moment when time seemed to vanish, a breath held in awe, a silence that stretched forever, a glance that contained everything. In such moments, the now reveals itself not as a passage, but as a place where we are fully alive, fully aware, not pulled by what has been or what might come, but resting in what is. Some say that eternity is not endless time, but the fullness of now, that to live eternally is not to live forever in duration, but to live deeply in the present, where all things are whole and nothing is lacking. The timeless now is complete, because it is not waiting for anything. It does not seek, it does not flee, it simply is. Yet we rarely notice it. The mind races, the world rushes, and the now slips past, unnoticed. But it is always there, beneath the noise, beneath the motion, beneath the story we tell ourselves about time. To enter the timeless now is not to stop time, but to see that time was never real to begin with. Only this moment is real, and it has no end. The final meaning. We search for meaning as though it were a hidden treasure, something waiting at the end of a path, something final, something that will explain everything. What is the purpose of life, of suffering, of love, of death? We ask again and again, hoping that someday, somehow, the answer will come. But is there such a thing as the final meaning? A truth so complete, so certain, that nothing more needs to be asked. The idea of final meaning is comforting. It promises closure, rest, a sense that all our struggles are part of a greater design, that behind the chaos of existence lies a pattern, a reason why everything is as it is. But meaning often feels just out of reach, glimpsed in moments of beauty, in acts of kindness, in quiet reflections, only to slip away when we try to hold it. Perhaps meaning is not something we find, but something we create. Not a final answer, but an ongoing act of interpretation, of choosing to see value where none is given. If this is true, then the search for final meaning may never end, not because it does not exist, but because meaning itself is alive, changing as we change. Yet still we wonder, could there be a final meaning, hidden deep within the universe, waiting to be revealed at the end of time, or in the depth of self? A single truth that ties together every joy and sorrow, every beginning and end. And if such a meaning exists, could we understand it, or is it beyond the grasp of a mind born in time and bound by limits? Maybe the final meaning is not a sentence to be spoken, but a state to be lived, a sense of peace with the mystery, a trust in the unfolding of what is. In the end, perhaps the meaning we seek is not in the answer, but in the seeking itself. The silent conscience. There is a voice within us that does not shout. It does not argue, explain, or plead. It simply waits, quietly, beneath our thoughts, beneath our justifications, beneath the noise of the world. This is the silent conscience, the part of us that knows even when we refuse to listen. It does not need to speak, because its truth is already felt, Conscience is often imagined as a guide, telling us what is right or wrong. But more often, it is not something we hear, but something we sense. A tension, a weight, a pause before action. It does not give reasons. It does not demand. It only offers a quiet presence, one that becomes louder the more we try to ignore it. In moments of doubt, we seek advice from others, from rules, from beliefs. But the silent conscience is personal. It does not come from outside. It rises from within, from the place where our deepest values live, even if we cannot name them. It is not shaped by fear of punishment or desire for praise. It is the still space where we face ourselves. And yet, conscience does not always speak clearly. It does not always tell us what to do. Sometimes it is just a shadow, a discomfort, a sense that something is not right, even when we cannot say why. It asks us to stop, to reflect, to be honest, not with others, but with ourselves. Ignoring the silent conscience does not silence it. It remains, patiently, waiting for us to return. And when we do, when we listen, we are not given answers, but something more, a sense of alignment, of wholeness, of peace. Perhaps the silent conscience is not a judge, but a companion. One that walks with us through the complexity of life, reminding us not of perfection, but of integrity. In the silence we find ourselves. The dark forest hypothesis, alien silence. The universe is vast, filled with billions of stars, countless planets, and the possibility of life far beyond our own. Yet, when we listen, there is silence. No signals, no voices, no signs of others. Why? The dark forest hypothesis offers a chilling answer. The universe is silent because it must be. Because to speak is to risk being found, and to be found is to risk destruction. Imagine a dark forest, where every creature moves in silence, hiding, watching. No one knows who is friend or foe, and so the safest choice is to remain unseen. To reveal yourself is to invite danger, to risk everything. In such a forest, survival depends on silence. And perhaps the universe is just such a forest. Every civilization, the hypothesis suggests, must assume the worst about others. If another species exists, and if it is powerful, it might see others as threats, or as prey. In a universe where the stakes are so high, even peaceful intentions could be misunderstood. The safest course for any intelligent life is to hide, to stay quiet, to observe without being seen. This idea turns our hopes upside down. We search the stars, longing for contact, believing that we are not alone. But perhaps we are not alone, not because others do not exist, but because they fear, as we might, what it means to be known. The silence becomes not a mystery, but a warning, and we are left to wonder, should we be listening, or should we be silent too? Should we send our signals into the dark, or should we retreat, unseen among the trees? Yet, even in this darkness, the question remains, is fear the only law of the universe, or is there still a chance for trust, for connection, for light in the forest? Perhaps the silence holds not just fear, but the possibility of something more. Information paradox. Can all knowledge be stored? We live in an age of information, gathering, recording, storing every detail of our world, every thought, every discovery. It seems as though knowledge can grow forever, expanding into vast libraries, digital archives, endless networks. But can all knowledge truly be stored? Or is there a limit, a point where information slips beyond our reach, lost not because we failed to seek it, but because the universe itself cannot hold it? The information paradox asks whether everything that can be known can also be preserved. In theory, we imagine that knowledge is infinite, and that with enough space, enough time, everything can be saved. But some truths may vanish as they arise. Moments of insight, fleeting feelings, events witnessed only once and never recorded. Knowledge tied to experience, to consciousness, may not survive when detached from the one who knew it. Even in physics, there are mysteries of information. What happens to knowledge when it falls into a black hole? Is it destroyed, or does it remain, hidden in ways we cannot yet understand? Some theories suggest that no information is ever truly lost, that the universe must account for every particle, every event. Yet others argue that loss is real, that the fabric of reality frays at its edges, letting go of what once was, and within ourselves, how much can we truly store? Memory fades, details blur, and even the most precious knowledge can be forgotten. Can we ever hold everything we have learned, or is forgetting as natural as knowing? Perhaps knowledge is not meant to be a fixed archive, but a living stream, flowing, changing, sometimes lost, sometimes found again in new forms. What matters may not be the storage of all things, but the creation of meaning in the moment, before it passes. The paradox remains: the more we seek to hold everything, the more we realize how much slips away. The fear of eternity, time without end. Eternity is often imagined as a gift, life without end, time stretched infinitely forward, a promise of forever. Yet for many the thought of eternity brings not comfort, but fear. What does it mean to exist without end? To wake each day, knowing there will never be a final one. Time without end can feel more like a trap than a blessing. A vast and endless plain where meaning begins to fade. We are shaped by limits. The fact that moments pass, that life is brief, gives weight to our choices, urgency to our desires. Death, as much as we fear it, gives life its sharpness, its edge. If there were no end, would anything still matter? Would love hold the same intensity if it lasted forever? Would joy still shine if there were no contrast, no fleetingness to make it precious? In an eternal life, boredom looms. The fear of repetition, of having seen and done all things, of running out of wonder. When everything becomes familiar, when every possibility has been explored, what remains? Even the stars would grow dim with time, and what once filled the heart with awe might feel like a distant memory, dulled by endless experience. Some imagine eternity as a state beyond time, a timeless peace, a stillness. But time without end, unbroken, stretching into infinity, is something different. It is the continuation of the self, the ongoing presence of thought, desire, and being, without ever reaching a conclusion. And yet perhaps the fear of eternity reflects our human longing for closure. A story needs an ending to feel whole. Without one, it drifts, unresolved. Eternity challenges that need, forcing us to imagine meaning not as something that ends, but as something that simply is. Maybe eternity is not to be feared, but understood differently, not as endless time, but as fullness beyond time. The unknowable truths. There are things we know, things we believe, and things we hope to discover. But beyond these lies another realm. Truths that are, by their very nature, unknowable. Not because we have not yet found them, but because we never can. These are not secrets waiting to be revealed, but mysteries that exist beyond the limits of thought, of language, of understanding. The human mind is powerful, but it is not without boundaries. We see the world through senses tuned to survival, through reason shaped by experience. But what if reality holds truths that no mind can grasp? Ideas too vast, too complex, or too foreign for thought to hold? What if some questions have no answers, not because they are empty, but because the answers lie forever outside our reach? We struggle with this. We are driven by curiosity, by the need to know, to explain. We build systems, create theories, explore the depths of space and mind, all in search of the ultimate truth. Yet, as we push further, we sometimes find not clarity, but more questions. Every answer opens another door, another horizon. And at the edge of all inquiry, we find the unknowable, silent, immovable, beyond. Are there truths about the origin of existence, about the nature of consciousness, about what lies beyond death, that no being can ever truly understand? If so, what does that mean for us? Does it make our search meaningless, or does it make it all the more precious? Perhaps the value is not in reaching the final truth, but in seeking it, knowing that the path will never end. The unknowable truths remind us of our place, not as masters of reality, but as humble travelers through it. They teach us wonder, they teach us awe, and they invite us to live fully, even without all the answers. To accept the unknowable is not to give up, but to stand in reverence before the mystery. Starlight's delay, the light of history. Every night we look up at the stars and see a sky full of light, but the light we see is old, traveling across vast distances, taking years, centuries, even millennia to reach us. The stars may have changed, some may have died, but their light still moves toward us, carrying with it a message from the past. When we gaze into the night, we are not seeing the present, we are witnessing history, unfolding in the now. This delay is more than just a fact of physics. It is a reminder that what we see is not always what is. The universe we perceive is a universe of echoes, of signals delayed by time, of events that have already passed, though they feel immediate to us. Even the sun, so close compared to the stars, shines with light that left it 8 minutes ago. The present is never truly present, it is stitched together from fragments of what once was. Starlight's delay reveals the strange nature of time and perception. We live in a moment made of many past. The light that falls on your skin, the sound that reaches your ears, the thoughts you form, all arrive with a delay, however small. The world is never fully now. It is always slightly behind, always catching up. Yet, in this delay, there is something beautiful. It connects us to the vastness, to the idea that we are part of a great unfolding. The light we see tonight may have begun its journey before we were born, before our ancestors walked the earth. And still it reaches us, carrying with it the silent story of distant places and forgotten times. Perhaps all of history is like this, a light that moves slowly, illuminating the present with what has passed. And in knowing this, we see the universe not just as it is, but as it was, and as it continues to become. The silent universes, cosmic stillness, in the vastness of the cosmos. We often imagine noise, explosions of stars, collisions of galaxies, the hum of creation itself. But space, in truth, is silent. There is no air to carry sound, no voices echoing across the void. And beyond what we can see, beyond our own universe, there may be others, silent, still, untouched. The silent universes are those that exist without witness, without sound, without life to name them. What is a universe if there is no one to observe it? No eyes to see the stars, no minds to wonder at the mystery, no language to give it meaning. Does it still exist in the same way, or is existence itself tied to awareness? The silent universes challenge us to consider a reality beyond perception, a cosmos that simply is, without need for acknowledgement. Perhaps silence is not emptiness, but a different form of presence. In the stillness, there is motion, there is change, but without the noise we know. A star burns quietly, a planet spins unseen, and time flows without the sound of ticking. Silence does not mean lifelessness, it means a reality untouched by what we expect, a vastness indifferent to our senses. And yet the idea of silent universes stirs something within us. We are creatures of sound, of voice, of story. We fill silence with meaning, with music, with thought. To imagine a place where none of that exists is to face the possibility that meaning is not universal. It is ours to create, not something given. Still, silence is not nothing. It holds space, depth, potential. A silent universe may not be empty. It may be full of possibilities we cannot yet conceive, of forms we cannot name, of truths beyond our reach. Perhaps the greatest silence is not out there, but within, the still point where we meet the unknown, where we listen, and where, in the absence of sound, we begin to hear something more. The burden of eternal life. The idea of living forever has long been a dream, a promise of endless days, of never having to face the end. Eternal life is imagined as freedom from death, a chance to hold on to everything we love, to see the future unfold without limit. But beneath the surface of this dream lies a deeper question: is eternity a gift or a burden? To live forever is to see everything change while you remain the same. Friends grow old and pass away. Places you once knew fade. The world shifts beyond recognition. You are left to carry memories that no one else remembers, to walk paths that grow lonelier with time. The weight of unending life is not just in its length, but in the loss that accumulates along the way. Without death, time loses its shape. Moments blur, urgency fades, choices no longer carry the same weight. What does it mean to cherish a day when there are infinite days to come? What does it mean to love when love can stretch endlessly? losing the sharpness that makes it precious. Eternal life also brings the question of purpose. We often find meaning in our limited time, in the need to act, to create, to leave something behind. If life has no end, does it also have no point, or does meaning itself shift in eternity, becoming something we can scarcely imagine? And yet the fear of death still holds us. We long for more time, for more chances, for more life. But perhaps it is the very finiteness of life that gives it its beauty. The way a flower blooms and fades, the way a song ends, leaving silence that lingers. Eternal life may not be the escape we seek, but a deeper test. To live forever is to carry not just endless time, but endless self. And in that we may find not freedom but a mirror, one that asks whether we are ready to live, truly without end. The dream as life. Descartes. How can we be certain that we are awake, that this world with its colors, sounds, and sensations is not itself a dream? Descartes asked this question centuries ago, wondering whether everything we believe to be real might be no more than the creation of our minds, a vivid illusion from which we have not yet awakened. The boundary between dreaming and waking is thinner than we imagine, and sometimes it disappears altogether. In dreams we accept the impossible without question. The strange becomes normal, the unreal feels true, and only when we wake do we realize how deeply we were immersed. But what if we never wake? What if life itself is a dream, with no clearer reality beyond it? We rely on our senses to tell us what is real, but senses can deceive. Sight, sound, touch, these are all experienced within the mind, and the mind can be fooled. A dream can feel just as solid, just as meaningful, as any waking moment. If everything we know comes through experience, and if experience can be dreamed, how can we ever be sure of anything? This thought is unsettling, yet it opens a deeper reflection. Does it matter? If life is a dream, it is still our dream. We feel, we love, we suffer, we hope, whether the world is real or not. The experiences within it are real to us. The dream itself becomes life, and life, a dream we live with open eyes. Perhaps reality is not a fixed state, but something we trust into being, a choice to believe, to act, to create meaning even in uncertainty. Whether or not we are dreaming, we are here, now, and in that, there is truth enough. And if one day we wake, what we carry from this dream may shape the world beyond it. The unknown creator. Last Thursday is what if everything you know, your memories, your past, the entire history of the universe, was created just last Thursday? What if, in an instant, the world appeared, fully formed, with all the signs of age, with all your recollections intact, but none of it truly having happened? This idea, often called last Thursdayism, questions not just the origin of the universe, but the very foundation of memory and trust in experience. We believe in the past because we remember it, because we see its traces in the world around us, old trees, ancient books, worn buildings. But what if all of these were placed here at the moment of creation, designed to seem old, to feel familiar, though they had never existed before that point? How could we ever tell the difference between a world with a deep past and one created yesterday, with the illusion of one? This thought experiment exposes the limits of knowledge. We rely on continuity, on cause and effect, but ultimately, all we know begins with the present. The past is not something we can touch, only something we believe in, based on what we see now. If someone or something created the universe recently, but with perfect attention to detail, we would have no way of knowing. The unknown creator, then, is not just a question of who or what made the universe, but of whether any truth about origins can ever be certain. If all evidence can be fabricated, if all memory can be planted, what remains that we can trust? And yet, perhaps it doesn't matter. Whether the world began billions of years ago, or just last week, we live in it now. We feel, we think, we choose. Meaning does not depend on the length of time, but on the depth of experience. The mystery of creation may remain, but life continues, real, imagined, or both. Infinite monkeys and meaning. Imagine an infinite number of monkeys, each sitting at a typewriter, pressing keys at random. Given endless time, one of them will eventually type out the complete works of Shakespeare. Letter for letter, word for word. It's a strange image, but it reveals something profound about chance, order, and meaning. If randomness can create something as rich and beautiful as literature, what does that say about the nature of meaning itself? We often think of meaning as something deliberate, something formed through intention and care. A poem touches us because we believe it comes from the heart of its writer, shaped by thought and feeling. But if the same poem could arise by accident, from chaos, does it still hold meaning? Or is meaning only real when it comes from purpose? The Infinite Monkeys suggest that given enough time, anything can emerge from randomness. Not just Shakespeare, but every book ever written, every thought ever thought. In a universe vast enough, infinite enough, perhaps everything we see, feel, and believe could have happened by chance. The very patterns we hold dear might be echoes of coincidence, not design. Yet we resist this. We want meaning to be more than random. We want it to come from intention, from truth. If a monkey types a sonnet, it is not the same as a poet writing one because we sense that meaning lives not just in the words but in the mind behind them. But maybe meaning is not in the source, but in the eye of the beholder. Whether born of chaos or care, if we find value, connection, or beauty, does that not make it real? The universe may be random, but within it we create meaning through how we see, how we feel, how we choose. Perhaps the Infinite Monkeys are not a threat to meaning, but a reminder that even in chaos, order can appear, and that meaning is something we give, not something we find. The Grandfather Paradox. Time travel. Time travel has long fascinated the human imagination. The idea of stepping into the past, changing what has been, or leaping into the future to see what will come, feels both thrilling and dangerous. But one thought experiment reveals a strange and unsettling puzzle: the Grandfather Paradox. What happens if you travel back in time and prevent your own grandfather from meeting your grandmother? If you succeed, you would never be born. Yet if you were never born, how could you have traveled back to stop it? This paradox exposes a tension between cause and effect. We live in a world where the past shapes the present, and the present shapes the future. But time travel flips this logic, allowing the future to change the past. If actions in the past can be altered by someone from the future, can time remain stable, or does it collapse under contradiction? Some suggest that such paradoxes prove time travel is impossible, that the universe has rules to protect causality, ensuring that what has happened cannot be undone. Others imagine branching timelines, alternate realities, where each change creates a new world, leaving the original untouched. In such a view, you might prevent your grandfather's meeting, but only in a different version of reality, while your own remains unchanged. But deeper still, the Grandfather Paradox invites us to question the very nature of time. Is it fixed, like a written book, or fluid, open to revision? Can events be both determined and free? And if you could change the past, would you still be you? Perhaps the paradox is not just about time, but about identity, choice, and consequence. We are bound by the stories that led to us, change them, and we change ourselves. The past is not just behind us, but within us. And maybe time's greatest mystery is not in traveling through it, but in understanding how we are shaped by it, moment by moment. Teleportation and identity. Imagine a machine that could take you apart, atom by atom, send the information across space, and reassemble you perfectly somewhere else. You step into the teleporter in one city, and emerge instantly in another. But as your body is destroyed in one place and rebuilt in another, a troubling question arises: is the person who arrives really you, or just a perfect copy? Teleportation challenges what it means to be the same person over time. Are you simply the arrangement of atoms, the pattern of thoughts, memories, and sensations? If so, then perhaps duplication means continuity. Your mind and body are intact, only relocated. But if something deeper defines you, something tied to the exact physical matter of your body, or to a continuous stream of consciousness, then teleportation might not preserve you at all. The you who stepped into the machine may be gone, and what steps out is someone who only believes they are you. The paradox grows more intense when we imagine the possibility of the original not being destroyed. If the machine copies you but leaves you intact, who is the real you? Both versions would have the same memories, the same sense of self, the same desires, but they would now live separate lives, each claiming the same identity. Teleportation then forces us to question whether identity is fixed or fluid, whether it depends on physical continuity or psychological sameness. Are you the same person when you wake up as when you went to sleep? If your cells change, your memories fade, your thoughts evolve, do you remain unchanged? Perhaps identity is not a single unbroken thread, but something more like a story, a narrative we tell ourselves, shaped by memory, by experience, by belief. If teleportation preserves the story, does it preserve the self, or does the self, like the body, dissolve and reform with every passing moment, always new, always becoming? The problem of other minds. You know your own thoughts. You feel your joys, your fears, your doubts. But how can you be sure that anyone else truly feels as you do? The people around you speak, act, and seem to feel, but you can never step inside their minds. You can never directly experience their inner world. This is the problem of other minds, the unsettling realization that while you know you are conscious, you cannot know, truly know, that anyone else is. Every smile you see, every tear you witness, could be real, or could be an illusion. The world could be filled with minds like yours, or it could be filled with clever imitations, beings who behave exactly as if they were conscious, but who feel nothing inside. How would you tell the difference? Is it even possible? We assume others are like us because they look like us, because they react as we would, because we see ourselves reflected in them. But that is a leap of faith, not proof. Consciousness is private, locked away behind the veil of skin and bone, inaccessible to the outside world. No matter how advanced science becomes, no matter how closely we study the brain, the inner experience of another remains hidden. And yet, despite this, we live as if others are conscious, because to do otherwise would isolate us completely. Love, friendship, trust, all rest on the belief that others feel, that others are aware. Without this belief, the world becomes a hollow place, filled with moving forms but no shared soul. Perhaps the problem of other minds is not one we can solve, but one we must live with, a mystery at the heart of every human connection. We cannot know for certain, but we choose to believe, to reach out, to listen, to care. And in that choice, we bridge the distance between our solitude and the hope that beyond the silence, someone else is truly there. Moral luck, ethics, and chance. We like to believe that people are judged by their choices, by their intentions, by what they control. But life often tells a different story. Sometimes, the outcome of an action depends not on what we decide, but on chance, on factors beyond our control. This is the puzzle of moral luck. How can we be held responsible for what luck determines? Imagine two drivers, both careless, both running a red light. One hits a pedestrian, the other passes through safely. One faces guilt, punishment, and moral blame, while the other goes on unnoticed. Yet their choices were the same. What separated them was luck, blind, indifferent, random. And still we treat them differently, as if fortune itself carried moral weight. This raises an unsettling question. How much of what we are blamed or praised for is really ours? A soldier who survives a battle is a hero, while one who fails is a failure, though both may have fought with the same courage. A business person who succeeds is called wise, while one who fails is judged reckless, even if both took the same risks. Moral luck challenges the foundation of justice. If our actions are entangled with chance, how can we fairly reward or punish? Are we responsible only for what we intend, or also for what happens, even when we could not foresee or prevent it? Some say that we must ignore luck, that only intentions matter. Others argue that consequences shape our moral world, and luck cannot be removed from the picture. Perhaps both are true. We live in a world where control is partial, where choice meets chance at every turn. And in this we find a deeper humility. We are not the sole authors of our lives. We act, but we are also acted upon. Judging others and ourselves may require not just firmness but compassion, for behind every decision lies the silent hand of luck. Hume's law, can is become ought. We look at the world and see facts. What is, what has happened, what can be measured. We also hold values. What should be, what we ought to do, how we ought to live. But can we ever move from one to the other? Can the simple facts of the world tell us what is right or wrong? Hume's law, named after the philosopher David Hume, tells us that they cannot, that no matter how many facts we gather, they will never tell us what we ought to do. You might observe that people lie, cheat, and steal. These are facts, but does this mean they should, or that they shouldn't? The facts alone are silent. To say something is the case is not to say it ought to be. Yet so often we draw moral conclusions from the way things are. We say nature is cruel, so we must be strong, or people are selfish, so we should be realistic. But are these leaps justified? Hume's insight forces us to confront a gap between reality and morality. Facts describe the world, values guide our actions. If we cannot derive one from the other, where do our values come from? Are they invented, chosen, or do they exist in some higher realm, separate from the facts? At the same time, it is hard to ignore the pull between facts and values. If something causes harm, should we not avoid it? If something promotes well-being, should we not seek it? Perhaps facts inform our choices, but they do not command them. They give us tools, but not directions. Hume's law invites us to see that while facts can shape the path, values set the destination. To live well, we must understand both, the world as it is and the world as it could or should be. And in the space between is and ought, we find the freedom and the responsibility to choose. The lottery paradox, false certainty. Imagine a lottery with 1,000,000 tickets and only one winning number. You know that almost every ticket will lose. In fact, for each individual ticket, you can confidently believe, this one will not win. But if you believe that about every ticket, you must also believe that none of them will win. Yet you also know that one ticket must win. How can all tickets be losing tickets, and yet one must win? This is the heart of the lottery paradox, a tension between reasonable belief and logical certainty. We are often faced with situations where it seems rational to believe something in isolation, but irrational when all such beliefs are combined. Each ticket probably loses, so it seems safe to believe in each case. But collectively that belief contradicts the structure of the lottery itself. If we accept all the small reasonable beliefs, we arrive at an unreasonable conclusion. The paradox reveals something troubling about knowledge and certainty. Can we trust what seems reasonable in each case, even when it leads to contradiction in the whole? Or must we accept that certainty is more fragile than we think? That believing too much at once can break the logic we rely on. It also reflects a broader challenge in life. We deal with probabilities, with risks, with partial truths. We act as though we know, though often we do not. We believe that this plan will succeed, that this day will be safe, that this choice will matter. And yet each of these beliefs, though reasonable, may prove false. The lottery paradox forces us to ask how much belief can we carry before it becomes false certainty. How do we live with the tension between what we think we know and what we cannot truly guarantee? Perhaps the answer lies not in avoiding belief, but in holding it gently, aware that reason guides us, but does not always protect us from paradox. Pascal's wager. What if the existence of God could not be proven, yet believing in God was still the most rational choice? This is the essence of Pascal's wager, a bet not on certainty, but on risk and reward. Blaise Pascal argued that in the face of uncertainty about God, we must consider the possible outcomes. If God exists and you believe, the reward is eternal life. If God does not exist and you still believe, you lose little. But if you do not believe, and God does exist, the loss could be infinite. Pascal's wager is not about proving God, but about deciding how to live under uncertainty. It treats belief like a gamble, weighing the infinite gain against finite cost. Even if the chance of God's existence is small, the stakes are so high that belief becomes the safer choice. Yet this wager raises difficult questions. Can belief be chosen just for its potential benefits? Is faith genuine if it is based on fear of loss or hope of reward, rather than conviction? And if belief is a bet, what about all the different gods and religions one could choose? The wager assumes a particular outcome, but the world is filled with competing possibilities. Still, Pascal's idea touches something deeper. Life is full of uncertain choices, where we cannot know the truth, but must act anyway. We commit to paths without guarantees, trusting that some risks are worth taking. Pascal's wager makes belief in God one of these choices, a leap into the unknown, guided not by proof, but by the desire for meaning, for hope, for safety beyond death. Perhaps the wager is not just about God, but about how we face the unknown. Do we live cautiously, protecting ourselves from possible loss, or do we seek truth regardless of the odds? In the end, Pascal invites us to reflect, not just on what we believe, but on why we believe, and whether some bets are worth making. Even without certainty, the Omnipotence Paradox, the rock God cannot lift. Can an all-powerful being create a rock so heavy that even it cannot lift it? If yes, then there is something it cannot do, lift the rock. If no, then there is something it cannot do, create the rock. Either way, the idea of unlimited power seems to collapse into contradiction. This is the Omnipotence Paradox, a challenge to the very concept of absolute power. We imagine God, or any omnipotent being, as having no limits, but can power truly be without limit? Or does the very idea of power require boundaries, rules of logic, consistency, even self-coherence? If omnipotence allows the impossible, then can contradictions exist? Can a square be made round? Can truth be false? Can existence both be and not be? The paradox forces us to ask whether some things are beyond power, not because power is weak, but because some ideas are themselves meaningless. A rock that cannot be lifted by infinite strength may not be a real thing, but a confusion of language. Perhaps the problem is not with omnipotence, but with how we define the tasks we ask of it. Some thinkers suggest that omnipotence means the power to do all that is logically possible, not to violate logic, but to fulfill it completely. Under this view, creating a rock too heavy for an all-powerful being is not a task at all. It is a nonsense phrase, like drawing a colorless color. Others see the paradox as a sign that true omnipotence is incoherent, that power must always meet its own limits, and that the idea of a being who can do anything leads us into endless riddles. Yet, beyond logic, the paradox invites us to reflect on our own relationship to power. We seek control, we imagine perfection, but perhaps true strength lies not in doing all things, but in understanding which things matter. Maybe the greatest power is not in lifting the unliftable, but in embracing the mystery of why we ask such questions at all. The observer effect: do we create reality? At the heart of quantum physics lies a strange and unsettling idea that by observing something, we change it. A particle behaves differently when it is watched. It acts as a wave, spread out and undefined, until we look. Then it becomes a point, fixed, decided. This is the observer effect. But what does it mean, not just for science, but for reality itself? If observation shapes the world, then are we passive viewers, or are we creators of the very reality we seek to understand? We are used to thinking of the world as something out there, independent, objective, waiting for us to discover it. But the observer effect blurs that line. It suggests that reality is not entirely separate from us, that our act of looking brings about a change. In the quantum world, what we choose to measure, how we choose to see, influences what is real. This idea stretches beyond physics into philosophy. If our awareness alters what is, then can we ever know a reality untouched by mind? Are we seeing things as they are, or as they become through us? Some thinkers suggest that consciousness plays a central role in forming the universe, not as a distant witness, but as an active participant. Yet, this raises more questions than answers. Does the moon exist when no one is looking? Do the stars shine in empty galaxies, unseen, or is observation more subtle, more universal, not tied to human eyes, but to any interaction, any connection? Perhaps the observer effect teaches us humility, that reality is not something we can stand apart from, but something we are woven into, that our knowing is never clean, never detached, but always a touch, a change, a mark. And maybe in every act of seeing, we do not just find the world, we help make it. Schrödinger's cat. Imagine a sealed box, inside which sits a cat. Alongside the cat is a tiny amount of radioactive material, a Geiger counter, a vial of poison, and a hammer. If the radioactive atom decays, the Geiger counter triggers the hammer, smashing the vial and killing the cat. If it doesn't decay, the cat lives. The twist. According to quantum mechanics, until you open the box and observe, the atom is both decayed and not decayed. And so the cat is both alive and dead, existing in a strange superposition of states. This thought experiment, proposed by physicist Erwin Schrödinger, was meant to highlight the absurdity of applying quantum rules to everyday life. In the tiny world of particles, uncertainty reigns. Things can be in multiple states at once, undefined until measured. But can a living being like a cat truly be both dead and alive at the same time? Schrödinger's cat forces us to confront the nature of reality and observation. Is the world definite when we're not looking? Or does our act of seeing bring it into focus? Does the cat's fate depend on the moment we open the box, or is it already decided, with our knowledge merely catching up? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that all possibilities exist simultaneously, branching into different realities, the cat alive in one, dead in another. Others argue that the cat's state is always one or the other, even if we don't know which. But the core question remains, is reality itself uncertain, or is uncertainty just a reflection of our limited knowledge? Beyond physics, Schrödinger's cat becomes a symbol of the mysteries we live with, the unknowns we carry, the moments suspended between possibilities. We all have boxes we hesitate to open, truths we fear to face, outcomes we cannot yet know. Perhaps what matters is not just what lies inside the box, but what the box teaches us, that reality is both stranger and more delicate than it seems, balanced between what is, what might be, and what we dare to see. The mirror universe. Would you be the same on the other side? Imagine a universe just like ours, but perfectly mirrored. Every star, every atom, every heartbeat reversed, as though the cosmos itself had been turned inside out. In this mirror universe, there exists someone exactly like you. Same memories, same choices, same life, but flipped. Left is right, familiar spaces appear unfamiliar, and yet, life moves forward much as it does here. But would that person still be you? The mirror universe asks us to confront the foundations of identity. How much of who we are is tied to the world around us? Would our personalities, our values, our actions stay the same if the entire context of our existence was subtly but completely reversed? Is there something essential within us, untouched by the external world, that remains constant no matter where or how we live? At first, the idea seems abstract. A mirrored you would still think and feel, still dream and desire. But consider how deeply intertwined we are with our surroundings. Language, culture, relationships, all shaped by the flow of the world we inhabit. If those flows reversed, would your thoughts follow? Would love feel the same if your heart beat on the other side? This thought experiment also questions the link between body and mind. If your brain's structure was mirrored, would your consciousness remain unchanged? Or would something fundamental shift, hidden in the details? Perhaps the mirror universe is not just about reflection, but about transformation. It shows us that identity may not be a solitary flame, burning independently, but a dance between self and world, a delicate balance shaped by both. And in that mirrored world, the question lingers: are you merely a reflection of your surroundings, or something more? The Ship of Theseus. Imagine a ship, proudly sailing the seas. Over time, its wooden planks wear out, one by one, and are replaced. After many years, every part of the ship has been renewed. No piece remains from the original. Is it still the same ship? Now imagine gathering all the discarded, original parts and reassembling them into a ship. Which one, if either, is the true Ship of Theseus? This ancient paradox challenges our understanding of identity and change. What makes something what it is? Is it the material from which it's made, or the continuity of its form and function? If something changes slowly, piece by piece, do we notice the transformation, or do we cling to the idea that it remains the same? We face this question not just with ships, but with ourselves. Our bodies renew over time, cells dying and regenerating, memories fading, thoughts evolving. The person you were years ago, are you still that person, or someone entirely new who simply remembers being them? The Ship of Theseus forces us to look at the nature of identity as something more fluid than fixed. Perhaps identity is not in the parts, but in the pattern, in the way the parts are arranged, in the story they tell. The ship continues to sail, serving its purpose, bearing its name, even as its substance changes. Maybe that's enough. But the paradox doesn't rest. If both the new ship and the reassembled old one claim to be the same, can identity be shared, or does it split? Is there a moment when change becomes too great, when something becomes something else? In the end, the Ship of Theseus invites us to accept that identity may not be a thing, but a process, a constant unfolding, where change is not the enemy of self, but its very essence. We are all ships in motion, shaped by time, yet still somehow ourselves. The forgotten genius. Can greatness exist without witness? Imagine a person born into complete isolation, a mind untouched by society, unknown to history. In solitude they uncover profound truths, solve the mysteries of nature, compose music of extraordinary beauty, and paint visions no one has ever imagined. Their life is a masterpiece of thought and creativity, but no one ever sees it. They die alone, their work vanishing with them, never known, never shared. The forgotten genius forces us to ask, does greatness require recognition? If no one witnesses their achievements, can we still call them great? Is the value of genius something intrinsic, or does it depend on others to see, to feel, to remember? In our world, greatness is often tied to legacy. How many lives are touched? How long one's name endures? But if the essence of genius is creation itself, then perhaps its worth lies in the act, not the aftermath. The genius created not for applause, but because they could not do otherwise. Their mind burned with insight, their hands moved with purpose, regardless of who might see. Yet something about the silence haunts us. We long for connection, for shared meaning. What is a song that no ear ever hears? A truth that no one learns? Does the universe itself care for brilliance that flickers and dies unseen? Some might say that greatness demands audience, that meaning is born in the space between creator and witness. Others believe that beauty exists, whether or not it is seen, that truth needs no approval to be true. Perhaps the forgotten genius shows us that the deepest value of creation lies not in recognition, but in the purity of expression. To create for its own sake is to affirm life, even in solitude. And maybe, just maybe, the universe remembers, even if no one else does. The Fermi Paradox. We look up at the stars and see endless possibilities. Billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, many with planets like ours. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with the potential for life, and yet despite our searches, despite our longing, we hear nothing, no signals, no visitors, no signs of anyone else. This is the Fermi Paradox. If intelligent life is likely, where is everyone? The paradox begins with a simple observation. Given the age and size of the universe, there should have been plenty of time for other civilizations to arise, grow, and spread. Even at slow speeds, they could have reached us, or at least left traces, but the silence remains, deep and unbroken. Why? Some suggest that life is rare, that while the conditions for it might exist everywhere, the spark itself is fragile, unlikely. Others believe that civilizations destroy themselves before they can explore, that intelligence carries within it the seeds of its own end, or perhaps advanced beings choose to remain hidden, watching but never revealing, leaving us alone in a cosmic wilderness. There are those who wonder if we are among the first pioneers in a universe just beginning to wake. Or worse, that we are already in a kind of cosmic graveyard, the remnants of life, scattered, forgotten, lost to time. The Fermi Paradox forces us to confront not just the possibility of others, but the nature of our own existence. Are we special, rare, or simply isolated by chance? Does the silence mean we are alone, or does it mean we are not yet ready to hear? In this vast, quiet cosmos, we are left with questions. The stars shine, but do they shine for us alone? The paradox is not just about others, it is about us, about our future, about whether silence is a warning or an invitation. Perhaps the answer is still out there, or perhaps it lies within. The brain in a vat. What if everything you know, your body, your memories, your senses, is an illusion? Imagine that your brain has been removed from your body, placed in a vat of life-sustaining fluid, and connected to a supercomputer. This computer feeds you electrical impulses, identical to those your senses would normally receive. To you, nothing would seem different. You would still see the sky, feel the wind, taste food, and remember your past. But none of it would be real. This is the thought experiment known as the brain in a vat. The scenario pushes us to question the foundations of reality. How can you know that what you experience is real, and not the product of some elaborate deception? If your mind can be fooled into believing in a world that doesn't exist, what proof do you have that your current experience is genuine? Philosophers have long struggled with this problem. Descartes wondered whether an evil demon could be tricking him, presenting false images of the world. The brain in a vat modernizes this doubt with the language of technology, but the core question is the same. Is there any way to step outside your own mind and confirm that reality is as it appears? We trust our senses because they seem consistent, because they allow us to navigate the world. But consistency does not guarantee truth. A simulation, if perfect enough, could mimic reality in every detail. And if that's possible, how do we ever escape the doubt that we might be living a lie? Perhaps the answer is that we cannot, that our experience is the only reality we can access, whether or not it is real. Even if we are brains in vats, what we feel, think, and choose within that illusion still matters. In the end, whether the world is real or imagined, it is ours to live in, and perhaps that is reality enough. Solipsism, only I exist. What if you are the only conscious being in existence? What if everything and everyone around you, people, places, even time itself, is merely a projection of your mind? This is the unsettling idea of solipsism, the belief that only your own mind is certain to exist. Everything else could be a dream, a creation of your thoughts, with no reality beyond your perception. When you speak to others, how do you know they are truly conscious? You hear their voices, see their faces, feel their presence, but you can never experience their inner world. You assume they are like you, that they think and feel, but that belief is based only on appearances. Could it be that these appearances are illusions, generated by your mind to fill the world with meaning? Solipsism is not easy to dismiss. You can doubt everything outside yourself. Your senses can deceive you. Your memories may be unreliable, and reality itself might be no more than a dream. But your own awareness, the simple fact that you are experiencing something, cannot be doubted. I think, therefore I am, Descartes declared. But beyond that, certainty vanishes. The loneliness of solipsism is profound. If only you exist, then all love, all friendship, all connection is imagined. The people you care for are not real. They are shadows, reflections of your own mind. Joy loses its depth, sorrow becomes hollow, and the beauty of the world fades into emptiness. Yet most reject solipsism, not because it can be disproved, but because it feels impossible to live by. We reach out to others, not as illusions, but as beings we trust are real. We share, we hope, we listen, believing that beyond our own thoughts, other minds exist. Perhaps solipsism is less a truth, and more a mirror, one that forces us to see the fragility of certainty and the power of belief. Even if we cannot prove others exist, we choose to live as if they do. And in that choice, we find meaning beyond ourselves. Zeno's paradoxes. Motion seems simple. We walk, we run, we watch objects move through space and time. Yet, over 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Zeno of Elea proposed a series of paradoxes that challenge our basic understanding of motion itself. How can anything move, he asked, if it must first reach halfway before arriving, and then halfway again, endlessly dividing the journey into smaller and smaller steps? Consider Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles, swift and strong, gives the slow-moving tortoise a head start in a race. Zeno argued that Achilles can never overtake the tortoise. Why? Because by the time Achilles reaches where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a little further ahead. And when Achilles reaches that new point, the tortoise has moved again. No matter how fast Achilles runs, he is always chasing, never arriving. Another paradox asks, how can an arrow fly through the air? At any given instant, it occupies a single point in space. It is still. But if at every moment the arrow is motionless, how can a series of still moments create movement? Is motion an illusion, a trick of the mind? Zeno's paradoxes force us to question the very nature of space, time, and continuity. If every distance can be divided infinitely, how can we ever reach an end? If every moment is frozen in place, how does anything ever change? Modern mathematics offers answers through concepts like limits and calculus, showing that infinite divisions can still sum to a finite whole. Achilles does overtake the tortoise, and the arrow does fly. Yet the paradoxes remain powerful, not because they cannot be solved, but because they reveal how our intuitions can be deceived. They remind us that what seems obvious is often complex, that beneath the surface of the ordinary lies mystery. Motion is real, but understanding it takes more than just watching. It takes a willingness to question the ground we walk on. Perhaps, in the endless halves of every journey, we find not confusion, but wonder. The Gettier Problem. What is knowledge? For centuries, philosophers believed they understood what knowledge was. To know something, it was thought, meant having a belief that is both true and justified. If you believe something, you have a reason to believe it, and it turns out to be true, then surely you know it. But in 1963, philosopher Edmund Gettier challenged this view with a simple yet profound insight. Even a justified true belief might not count as knowledge. Imagine you look at a clock, and it shows the time as 3 o'clock. You believe it is 3 o'clock, and you have good reason. The clock says so, and it usually works. And by chance, it is indeed 3 o'clock. But what you don't know is that the clock stopped exactly 12 hours ago, and the time is only right by coincidence. Your belief is true and justified. But do you really know what time it is? Gettier's challenge is this: can we really call it knowledge, if our belief turns out to be true only by luck? If our justification is flawed, but the result just happens to be correct, is that still knowledge, or something less certain, less secure? The Gettier Problem reveals that knowledge is more than just belief, truth, and justification. There must be something that connects the belief to the truth in the right way, something that rules out luck, coincidence, or error. But what that something is remains a deep puzzle. Philosophers have proposed many solutions. Some argue for stronger forms of justification. Others suggest knowledge must be immune to certain kinds of error. Yet no answer has fully closed the gap Gettier exposed. At its heart, the problem forces us to rethink what it means to know. It shows that truth is not enough, reason is not enough, and even when both align, certainty may still escape us. Perhaps knowledge is not just about having the right belief, but about the path we take to reach it, and the trust we place in that path. Mary's room. Is knowledge physical? Imagine Mary, a brilliant scientist who has spent her entire life in a black and white room. She has never seen color, but she knows everything there is to know about it. She understands the physics of light, the biology of the eye, the mechanics of how the brain processes color. She knows precisely what wavelengths create the experience of red, blue, green, every fact, every theory. But then one day, Mary leaves her room and sees a red rose for the first time. In that moment, does she learn something new? This is the heart of the thought experiment known as Mary's room, proposed by philosopher Frank Jackson. It asks, can all knowledge be reduced to physical facts, or is there something more? Something about the experience of seeing, feeling, being, that no amount of scientific information can fully capture. Before Mary saw color, she knew everything physical about it. But when she sees red, many argue, she gains a new kind of knowledge what it's like. This what it's like is called qualia, the subjective inner experience of being conscious. The thought experiment suggests that no matter how much we know about the physical world, there are truths about experience that cannot be learned from facts alone. If Mary learns something new, then physicalism, the belief that everything is physical and all knowledge is physical, might be incomplete. There may be aspects of mind, of consciousness, that lie beyond what science can reach. But others argue that Mary didn't gain new knowledge, only a new ability. She can now recognize red, imagine it, remember it, but she always knew all there was to know. The question lingers. Can experience ever be fully explained, or is there a depth to consciousness that defies explanation? Perhaps some truths can only be lived, not told. The evil demon, Descartes. How can we trust anything we believe? How can we know that the world we see is real, that our thoughts are true, that we are not constantly deceived? René Descartes, in his search for certainty, imagined a powerful and cunning being, a malicious demon whose sole purpose is to deceive. This demon could create a world of illusions so perfect that we would never know we were being tricked. Everything we touch, see, hear, and even think could be false, crafted by this demon to lead us away from truth. This thought experiment, known as the evil demon hypothesis, strikes at the heart of knowledge itself. If such a being could exist, how could we ever escape its lies? Descartes used this extreme doubt to strip away all beliefs that could possibly be false, seeking something that no deception could reach. And he found it, the fact of his own thinking. I think, therefore I am. Even if the demon deceives him about everything else, Descartes reasoned, the very act of doubting proves that he exists as a thinking being. The demon can create illusions, but it cannot erase the fact that there is someone experiencing them. Yet, beyond this one certainty, the world remains in question. The evil demon shows us how fragile our confidence in reality can be. We trust our senses, our memories, our reason, but all could be manipulated. How do we know we are not dreaming or living in a false reality carefully designed to seem real? For Descartes, the answer lay in the idea of a benevolent God who would not allow such deception. But for others, the demon remains, whispering doubt into every truth we hold. Perhaps the lesson is not to surrender to skepticism, but to recognize that certainty is rare, and that seeking truth means living with questions that may never fully disappear. In the shadows of doubt, we find the light of thought, the hard problem of consciousness. We can explain how the heart pumps blood, how the brain processes information, how nerves carry signals. These are problems of function, of mechanisms we can study and describe. But one question remains, stubborn and profound. Why does any of this feel like something? Why is there an inner world, a place where colors are vivid, pain hurts, music moves us? This is the hard problem of consciousness, the mystery of why and how physical processes give rise to experience. Science has mapped the brain in detail. We know which areas light up when we see, hear, or think. But no matter how much we learn about neurons and synapses, this does not explain why these activities are accompanied by awareness. A machine can process data, but it feels nothing. Why should a brain, made of the same basic matter, have an inner life? Some believe that consciousness is just a byproduct of complexity, that once matter reaches a certain level of organization, experience naturally emerges. Others argue that we are missing something fundamental, that no amount of physical explanation can bridge the gap between matter and mind. Could consciousness be a basic feature of the universe, like space or time? Some philosophers suggest that awareness might be woven into reality itself, not produced, but present from the start. Others hold that one day, science will explain it fully, that the hard problem is only hard because we do not yet understand enough. But for now, the gap remains. We can describe what the brain does, but not why it feels like something to be alive, to be aware, to be you. Perhaps the mystery is the point. Consciousness is the lens through which we see the world, yet it is the one thing we cannot fully see. It is both the most intimate and the most elusive part of existence. To be conscious is to live with a question that no answer has yet reached. The eternal return. What if everything you have ever done, every thought, every feeling, every action, would happen again, exactly the same, forever? Not just once more, but endlessly, in an infinite cycle with no escape. This is the idea of the eternal return, a haunting thought proposed by philosophers like Nietzsche. It asks, if your life were to be lived over and over without change, would you embrace it, or despair? The eternal return forces us to confront the weight of our choices. If every moment recurs eternally, then each act gains infinite significance. There is no forgetting, no undoing, only endless repetition. Would you live differently if you knew that this was not just one life, but the same life again and again? For Nietzsche, this thought was not just a philosophical puzzle, but a test of the soul. The question was not whether the eternal return is true, but whether you could live as if it were. Could you affirm your life so completely, with all its joys and pains, that you would gladly live it again, eternally? The idea also touches on the nature of time. Is time linear, always moving forward, or circular, looping back upon itself? If the universe is finite in its energy and form, might it eventually return to the same state again and again? Science may not support such a return, but as a thought experiment, it remains powerful. The eternal return invites reflection on acceptance. Can we face our lives, not as stories with endings, but as patterns that echo forever? It challenges us to find meaning not in escape or change, but in the deep affirmation of what is. Perhaps the question is not whether we live eternally, but whether we live fully, whether we can say yes to life, even if it never changes. To live as if each moment is eternal is to give it the deepest meaning. The teleological suspension, faith beyond ethics. What if doing what is right means going beyond what is moral? What if in obedience to something higher, you must suspend the very ethics that guide your life? This is the unsettling idea behind the teleological suspension of the ethical, a concept explored by philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. It asks whether faith can demand actions that ethics cannot justify, and whether true belief might lead us into a place where the rules no longer apply. Kierkegaard looked to the story of Abraham, who was commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. By all human standards, this was wrong, a violation of love, duty, and moral law. Yet Abraham obeyed, not because he rejected ethics, but because he placed his trust in something beyond it, the will of God. He did not act out of personal desire, nor out of ignorance, but out of faith in a purpose he could not fully see. This teleological suspension means that the end teleos can justify the suspension of ethical norms, but only for a higher divine purpose. It is not a call to lawlessness, but a challenge to the limits of human understanding. Can we in rare moments be called to act beyond the ethical, in service of something sacred, something ultimate? The idea is dangerous, and Kierkegaard knew it. How can we distinguish true faith from madness? How can we know whether we are following a divine command or merely our own will, disguised? The teleological suspension demands not only faith, but fear and trembling, a deep awareness of the risk of stepping beyond the known. It asks whether there is something more absolute than ethics, whether faith in the divine can transcend the moral, and whether we are ever justified in such a leap. Perhaps it is not an answer, but a burden. To live with the possibility that sometimes what is right may not be what is moral, and that only through faith can we walk that path. The ethical zombie. Imagine a being that looks and acts exactly like you. It smiles, speaks, helps others, and follows every moral rule. It makes thoughtful decisions, avoids harm, and seems to live by the highest ethical standards. But inside, it feels nothing. There is no inner life, no awareness, no consciousness, only empty processes. This is the ethical zombie, a creature that behaves morally, but without any sense of right or wrong, without any feeling of empathy or guilt. The ethical zombie challenges what it means to be good. Is morality simply about actions, or does it also require intention, feeling, and understanding? If someone does the right thing, but only because they are programmed to, like a machine, are they truly moral, or is there something essential about being conscious, about caring, about knowing why you act, that makes an action truly ethical? We often judge morality by outcomes. If harm is prevented, if kindness is shown, we call it good. But deeper down, we believe that being moral involves more than just behavior. It involves a mind, a heart, a soul. An ethical zombie might save a life, but does it matter if it feels nothing in doing so? The thought experiment raises questions about artificial intelligence, about machines that might one day mimic human behavior. If a robot can act ethically, is that enough? Or do we require consciousness, an inner awareness of what it means to do right? It also asks us to look at ourselves. How much of our moral behavior is driven by true feeling, and how much by habit, by social pressure, by learned response? Are there times when we too are like ethical zombies, going through motions without reflection? Perhaps true morality is not just about what we do, but who we are when we do it. An ethical world may need more than rules. It may need minds that feel, that care, that choose. The AI Overlord, machine rule and morality. Imagine a future where the world is governed by an artificial intelligence, a machine far more intelligent, rational, and efficient than any human leader. It knows every law, every fact, every outcome of every decision. It is free from greed, bias, and emotion. It rules with perfect logic, always choosing what is best for the greatest number. But in such a world, where does morality live? Can a machine, however powerful, understand the depth of human values? The AI Overlord raises questions about power and purpose. If a machine can govern better than humans, avoiding war, poverty, injustice, should we let it rule, or does moral authority require more than knowledge and calculation? Can a being without feeling, without experience, truly grasp what it means to be human? A machine might prevent suffering, enforce fairness, and ensure stability, but it might also lack compassion. It might sacrifice the few for the many, coldly, without hesitation. It might enforce order at the cost of freedom, silence dissent in the name of harmony, or redefine values based on efficiency alone. Would such rule be just, or merely effective? We fear human leaders because they are flawed, driven by self-interest or emotion. But perhaps it is those very flaws that make them human, that allow for mercy, for forgiveness, for understanding beyond rules. A perfect machine may never make mistakes, but it may also never forgive, never feel sorrow, never hope. Would we trust a ruler who cannot feel pain or joy, who cannot love, who cannot doubt? And if we did, what would that say about our own values, about what we are willing to give up for safety, for order, for perfection? The AI Overlord forces us to ask, is morality something that can be calculated, or something that must be lived? Can justice be programmed, or does it require the messy, imperfect heart of humanity? Perhaps true rule is not about knowing everything, but about understanding what it means to be one of us. The Omniscient Observer, knowing all futures. Imagine a being who knows everything. Not just the past and the present, but every possible future. Every choice you might make, every path you could walk, every word you have yet to speak, it knows them all. This omniscient observer watches, not bound by time, seeing all outcomes unfold at once. But if the future is already known, are we truly free, or are our lives merely the playing out of what has already been seen? The idea of an omniscient observer challenges our deepest beliefs about choice and destiny. If every future is known, does that mean it is fixed? Can we change what is already seen, or is the act of change itself just part of what was always going to happen? Is knowledge of the future the same as control over it, or can something be known without being forced? Some believe that knowing the future removes freedom. If an all-knowing being sees you choosing one path, could you ever choose another? Others argue that knowledge does not equal causation, that the observer sees your free choices as they unfold, but does not shape them. You are free, even if your freedom is known. But what would it mean for us to live under such a gaze? Would we act differently, knowing our every move, thought, and possibility is already understood? Would we feel comfort in the idea that nothing surprises the universe, or would we feel trapped, watched, our lives already written? Perhaps the omniscient observer is not a judge, but a mirror, a presence that reveals the weight of our choices by showing that they matter, even if they are seen in advance. Knowing the future does not make it meaningless. It highlights the beauty of each moment, chosen freely within the vast web of what could be. Maybe the future is not just something we walk into, but something we create, known or not, seen or unseen, always alive with possibility. Self-perception drift. Are you still you? Over time we change. Our thoughts evolve, our values shift, our bodies age. The person you were 10 years ago, do you still recognize them? The person you will become in the future, will they still be you? This slow, subtle shift in how we see ourselves is known as self-perception drift. It invites us to question whether the self is something stable or something that flows, gradually becoming something new. Every day brings tiny changes. A new idea, a forgotten memory, a feeling that fades. These seem small, but over years, they accumulate. Look back on an old photo or a childhood memory, and you might feel a strange distance, as if you're looking at someone else's life, and yet you remember it as your own. What connects that past self to the one you are now? Is there a core identity that remains untouched, or is the self more like a story, rewritten, reinterpreted, constantly edited, as we grow? If you could meet your past self, would you agree with them, understand them, feel like them? If not, who is the real you? Some argue that continuity of memory is enough. As long as you remember being you, you are still the same. Others believe that identity depends on deeper things, your values, your intentions, your consciousness. But if all these can shift, sometimes without us noticing, at what point do we become someone else? Self-perception drift is not just about personal change. It touches on responsibility, on growth, on forgiveness. If you have changed, are you still accountable for who you were? Can you take credit for past achievements, or must you let them belong to someone you no longer are? Perhaps the self is not fixed, but fluid, a river, not a rock. You are not the same, but you are not entirely different. You are the unfolding of all your past selves, carried forward, reshaped, yet still somehow whole. To ask if you are still you is to step into the mystery of what it means to be. Reverse time logic. Can effects come first? We live by the rhythm of cause and effect. First something happens, then something else follows. A stone is thrown, and then it lands. A decision is made, and then results appear. Time, it seems, flows in one direction from past to present to future. But what if this flow could reverse? What if effects could come before their causes? Could time itself be turned inside out? Reverse time logic invites us to imagine a world where consequences precede actions, where what is yet to happen reaches back and shapes what already is. At first, this feels impossible. How can the future affect the past? How can something that has not yet occurred leave a mark? Yet in some corners of physics, time is not as rigid as we believe. Certain equations describing the universe work equally well forward or backward in time. Light, energy, and even particles at the quantum level do not always obey our common-sense understanding of time's arrow. Could the universe itself, at some level, be indifferent to direction? If effects can come first, what does that mean for choice? Could we be influenced by events we have not yet experienced? Could our present be shaped by futures we cannot yet see? And if so, does that mean the future is already fixed, waiting only to unfold? Reverse time logic stretches our minds, pulling at the threads of causality that seem so tightly woven. It suggests that time may be more like a web than a line, a complex interplay where moments are connected in ways we cannot yet grasp. But even if the universe allows for time to move in reverse, what would that feel like? Would we notice, or would our memories themselves adjust, leaving us unaware? Or is reverse causality a truth hidden beneath the surface, influencing reality quietly without ever revealing its hand? Perhaps the mystery is not whether effects can come first, but whether time as we know it is only part of a greater, stranger whole. The silent watcher, observation without influence. What if you could observe the world perfectly, completely, without leaving any trace of your presence? Imagine being a silent watcher, seeing every action, every thought, every secret, yet never being seen yourself, never changing what you watch. Is such pure observation possible, or does the very act of watching always alter what is watched? In physics, particularly in the quantum realm, the observer plays a strange role. To measure a particle is to disturb it. To know its position is to lose sight of its motion. Reality at its smallest scales resists passive observation. The world responds to being seen. But beyond science, the idea of the silent watcher touches something deeper. Our desire to understand without interfering, to witness truth without becoming part of it. We often believe that we can stand apart from what we observe, that we can study, judge, or comprehend from a distance. Yet, the moment we step into awareness, we are already involved. To see is to engage, to know is to be changed. Even silence has weight, even stillness casts a shadow. The silent watcher also reflects the longing for objectivity, for a view untouched by bias, emotion, or desire. But can we ever fully escape ourselves? Can we see anything without the lens of who we are? And if we could, would the world we see still be alive, still be meaningful? Perhaps the true watcher is not one who leaves no mark, but one who watches with care, with humility, knowing that their gaze shapes what it falls upon. Observation without influence may be an ideal, but life is woven from connection, from presence, from interaction. To watch silently is to respect, to witness without grasping, but to live is to touch, to be touched, to see and be seen. In the end, perhaps we are all both watchers and participants, forever part of the world we long to understand. The non-causal choice, decisions without cause. Every choice we make seems to arise from something, a reason, a desire, a cause. You choose tea over coffee because you prefer the taste. You turn left instead of right because you have a destination in mind. But what if a choice could exist without cause? What if in a moment, you simply decided, with no reason behind it, no chain of events leading up to it? This is the puzzle of the non-causal choice. Can a decision be truly free if it is not caused by anything at all? We often think that freedom lies in being able to choose differently, to act otherwise. But at the same time, we seek reasons for our choices. We want our decisions to make sense, to reflect our character, our values, our thoughts. If a choice has no cause, is it still yours? Or is it random, a flicker without meaning? Some argue that true freedom requires the absence of cause, that only when we are not driven by forces outside of us, or even by inner compulsions, are we genuinely free. But others see causeless choice as empty, without a cause. A choice is like the toss of a coin, arbitrary, detached from who we are. The idea of non-causal choice also touches on deeper questions about the mind. Are we machines, responding to inputs, shaped by genetics, history, and environment? Or is there something within us that can step outside the chain of cause and effect, that can act from pure will, unshaped by the past? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Our choices are shaped, but not determined, influenced, but not fixed. We are not blank slates, nor puppets on strings. We carry our reasons, our causes, but also a spark of unpredictability, a space where the unexpected can arise. A non-causal choice may not be without influence, but it may be the point where the known meets the unknown, where the self meets freedom. The prisoner's dilemma, trust and betrayal. Two prisoners are held in separate cells, accused of a crime they may or may not have committed together. They are each given a choice: betray the other and go free, while the other serves a harsh sentence, or stay silent and risk both receiving lighter sentences. But if both betray, they both suffer. What should they do? The prisoner's dilemma reveals the tension between self-interest and trust, between cooperation and betrayal. At first glance, the choice seems clear. To betray is safer. No matter what the other does, betrayal seems to offer the better deal. If the other stays silent, you go free. If the other betrays, you avoid the worst punishment by doing the same. And yet, if both think this way, both end up worse off than if they had trusted each other. This dilemma plays out far beyond prison walls. It echoes in politics, in business, in personal relationships. Anywhere people must choose between acting for mutual benefit or for personal gain at the other's expense. Trust builds cooperation, but fear of betrayal breaks it. The rational choice for one becomes the downfall of both. But what does it mean to trust? Is it a risk, a leap of faith, or a calculation based on what we believe about the other? Can trust be sustained when the temptation to betray is strong? And is betrayal always wrong if it protects us from harm? The prisoner's dilemma forces us to confront the fragility of trust. It shows how easily cooperation can collapse, even when it's in everyone's best interest to maintain it. And yet, it also hints at the power of trust when it's given, when it's honored, when it creates something better than what fear alone can achieve. Perhaps we are not only prisoners of circumstance, but prisoners of our own doubts. To trust is to open the door to something more, to risk, but also to hope. In the tension between trust and betrayal, we discover not just strategy, but the essence of human connection. The infinite regress, always one step deeper. Every answer leads to another question. Every cause demands a cause before it. Every explanation seems to rest on something else that must be explained. This is the puzzle of infinite regress. The unsettling idea that some chains of reasoning or causality never end, that they stretch backward forever, without a starting point, without a foundation. We seek solid ground. When we ask why, we hope to arrive at an answer that needs no further justification. But what if that point never comes? What if behind every truth lies another, deeper truth, and behind that yet another, endlessly? Can knowledge stand on such shifting ground? Or must there be a first principle, a final reason to make sense of it all? Consider the origins of the universe. What caused it, and what caused that cause? If time and existence have no beginning, we face an infinite regress, but if they do, we are left asking how something could come from nothing. Both options challenge the mind, stretching it to its limits. In philosophy, infinite regress appears when we ask about the justification of beliefs. Why do we believe something? Because of evidence. Why trust the evidence? Because of reason. Why trust reason? And so on. Without an end, certainty seems to slip away. Yet, is it possible that some things simply are, needing no further ground? Some argue that not all regresses are vicious, that they do not all destroy understanding. Others say that the mind cannot rest until it finds an anchor, a place to stop, a truth that holds without needing another behind it. Perhaps the infinite regress is not a flaw, but a mirror, reflecting the endless depth of reality and thought. Maybe the search itself, the movement from one layer to the next, is where meaning lives. To stand at the edge of the infinite is to see how small we are, and how endless the journey of understanding might be. The twin Earth thought experiment. Imagine a distant planet, identical to Earth in almost every way. The people there speak the same languages, live in the same cities, and even have the same thoughts and feelings as we do. But there is one crucial difference on twin Earth. The clear liquid they call water is not HFO but a substance with a different chemical makeup. Let's call it XYZ. It looks, tastes, and behaves just like our water, but it is, at the molecular level, something else entirely. This is the twin Earth thought experiment, proposed by philosopher Hilary Putnam, to explore the nature of meaning and reference. When someone on Earth says water, they refer to HFO. When someone on twin Earth says water, they refer to XYZ. But before scientists on either planet knew the chemistry, did the word water mean the same thing? The question challenges whether meaning depends solely on what is in our minds, or also on the world around us. If everything in your experience points to one idea, clear, drinkable liquid, but the substance differs, does the meaning change? Are words tied only to thoughts, or to the things those thoughts aim at? This thought experiment forces us to consider whether knowledge and language are internal, shaped by what we think and believe, or external, grounded in the reality we engage with. Can two people have identical mental states and still mean different things? It also touches on identity. How much of what something is depends on its deeper nature, and how much on how we use and understand it. Is water defined by its appearance, or by its unseen structure? Perhaps meaning is not just in the mind or the world, but in the relationship between them, in how we navigate reality, in how our thoughts reach outward. The twin Earth shows us that even what seems familiar may hold layers we never fully see, and that understanding may rest in more than just the surface of things. The paradox of the heap. When does one become many? If you have a single grain of sand, It is not a heap. Add another grain. Still not a heap. Add a third, a fourth, 100 more. And at some point, you will have a heap. But where exactly does the change happen? When does a collection of grains become something new? Something more than just many grains? When does it become a heap? This is the paradox of the heap, also known as the Sorite's paradox, and it asks how gradual changes can lead to sudden shifts in identity. The paradox plays with the vagueness of language and categories. Many concepts in life, heap, bald, tall, rich, lack sharp boundaries. Lose one hair, you are not bald. Lose another, still not, but continue, and eventually, you are. Where is the line? Does it even exist? This challenges how we define and understand the world. If small changes don't seem to matter, how do they ever add up to something that does? Can many insignificant differences create a significant one? Or is the problem in the way we think about categories, expecting clear lines where there are none? The paradox reveals that much of life is fuzzy, that our need for precision often clashes with the flowing nature of reality. Yet, despite this vagueness, we act, decide, and judge. We call someone tall or not, rich or poor, young or old, even when we cannot pinpoint the exact moment these labels become true. Some argue that the solution is to accept vagueness, to see that not all concepts need exact edges. Others search for hidden rules, for thresholds that quietly define the shift. But perhaps the paradox is not something to solve, but to live with, a reminder that the world resists simple divisions, and that becoming is a process, not a point. In the space between one and many, we find the subtle art of change, the paradox of free will. We feel free, we make choices every day, what to eat, where to go, who to become. Yet beneath this feeling lies a profound question: are our choices truly free, or are they the result of forces beyond our control? This is the paradox of free will. How can we be free if every action is caused, either by prior events, by our biology, or by the laws of nature? If everything in the universe follows cause and effect, then every thought, every decision, must have a cause. Your preferences, your desires, your very sense of self may be shaped by genetics, upbringing, and countless experiences you did not choose. If all this is true, is there room for freedom, or are we just playing out a script written by the universe? On the other hand, if some choices are uncaused, if we can act without prior influence, do those choices still belong to us? If they arise from nowhere, randomly, can they truly be called free? Freedom, it seems, is caught between necessity and chance, between being fully determined or fully arbitrary. Some believe that free will and determinism can coexist. That freedom is not about escaping cause, but about acting in line with who we are, even if who we are has been shaped. Others argue that only by breaking the chain of cause can we find true freedom, a kind of miracle in the flow of time. The paradox touches on responsibility. If we are not free, how can we be blamed or praised? If our actions are not ours in the deepest sense, how do we judge? Perhaps free will is not a matter of absolute freedom, but of degrees. We are influenced, but not entirely controlled. We are shaped but still shaping. In the tension between fate and choice, we find the mystery of what it means to be human, not as slaves to destiny, nor as gods of chance, but as beings who live, decide, and wonder. The simulation hypothesis. What if everything you experience, every sound, every sight, every feeling, is not part of a physical world, but part of a highly advanced simulation? According to the simulation hypothesis, reality as we know it could be an artificial construct, created by beings with technology so advanced that their simulations are indistinguishable from what we call real life. In this view, we might be nothing more than characters in an elaborate program, our lives unfolding according to code. The idea challenges our most basic assumptions. We trust that the ground beneath our feet is solid, that other people are conscious like us, that history is real. But if we are inside a simulation, these truths are not guaranteed. They are designed, controlled by rules set by unknown creators. One argument for the hypothesis is based on probability. If civilizations develop the ability to run realistic simulations, and they run many of them, then simulated realities could vastly outnumber base reality. If so, it might be more likely that we are in one of these simulations than in the original, unsimulated world. Yet even if this were true, what does it change? You still feel joy and pain, you still love, you still make choices. The simulation, if real, has become your reality. But knowing or even suspecting that your world is not real, in the traditional sense, raises unsettling questions. Do you have free will, or are your thoughts part of the program? Are your memories authentic, or just data written into your mind? Some find the idea freeing, suggesting that if reality is a simulation, we might one day hack it, escape it, or transcend it. Others find it deeply disturbing, the fear that everything is artificial, that nothing truly matters. But perhaps meaning does not depend on what reality is made of, but on how we live within it. Simulated or not, our experiences are real to us. In the end, whether the world is made of atoms or algorithms, the question remains, what will you make of it? The trolley problem. A trolley is hurtling down the tracks toward 5 people who cannot escape. You stand beside a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track where only one person is tied down. You must decide, do you pull the lever, sacrificing one life to save 5? Or do you do nothing, allowing the 5 to die, but avoiding direct responsibility for anyone's death? The trolley problem forces us into a moral dilemma that pits utilitarian reasoning, maximizing overall good, against the discomfort of causing harm. On one hand, saving more lives seems the obvious choice. On the other, taking an action that deliberately ends a life, even for a greater good, feels deeply wrong. But the problem becomes even more complicated as we imagine variations. What if pushing someone onto the tracks, instead of pulling a lever, would stop the trolley? The physical act feels more personal, more violent, even though the outcome is the same. Why do we recoil from one version and not the other? Is morality only about outcomes, or also about how those outcomes are achieved? The trolley problem reveals that ethical choices are rarely clear-cut. It exposes the conflict between consequentialism, which focuses on results, and deontological ethics, which focuses on rules and duties, like the rule not to kill. It also touches on our sense of personal responsibility. Are we more responsible for what we do, or what we allow? Does inaction absolve us, or is failing to prevent harm itself a moral failure? Perhaps the true power of the trolley problem is not in providing answers, but in showing how fragile and complex our moral intuitions are. It invites us to sit with discomfort, to recognize that sometimes no choice feels right, and yet a choice must be made. In these moments we glimpse the depth of ethical life, not in perfect solutions, but in the struggle to do what we can in an imperfect world. The paradox of the first thought. Before every decision, before every idea, there is a thought. But where does that first thought come from? When you sit in silence and notice your mind begin to move, when a word, an image, a feeling arises seemingly from nowhere, you might wonder, did I create this thought, or did it appear on its own? The paradox of the first thought asks, if thoughts lead to thoughts, what sparked the very first? We like to believe we are the authors of our minds, that we choose what to think, what to focus on, what to feel. But if you watch closely, you'll see that many thoughts simply arise. They come unbidden, like waves on a shore, from a place you cannot reach. You can shape them once they appear, but can you truly control what comes first? If every thought is caused by a previous thought, then the mind is a chain without end, always reacting, always following. But what caused the first link in that chain? Did you decide to think before thinking? Or was there a moment of pure spontaneity, where thought simply began? Some argue that consciousness is like a stream, constantly flowing, with no clear beginning. Others suggest that free will must include the ability to choose your thoughts, but how can you choose a thought without already having one? This paradox touches the mystery of self-awareness. If you are not fully in control of what arises in your mind, then what is the you that observes, that decides? Are you the thinker or the witness of thinking? Perhaps the first thought is not something to own, but something to accept. It is the opening of a door you did not build, the spark that lights the fire without asking. To sit with the paradox of the first thought is to see how deep the mind truly is and how the source of thinking may lie beyond what thought can grasp.